Derek is going to be running late this evening. Chair Daniels, so I'll be taking over in his stead. We're going to start as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item on the agenda, as always, is the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments that need to be made to it? If not, I will entertain a motion to adopt it as presented. All right, moved by Commissioner Kenny, seconded by Commissioner Fernahoff. Just want to see here, just to confirm right now, okay, we do have a fourth commissioner online. I just want to make sure we had a quorum to continue.
That always helps.
Yes. All right. So the first item then on the agenda that's just been approved is the
Did we vote?
oh, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, great. Will be our claim vouchers. I'm looking for the number here. There a number associated with this, Melissa? All right, so the chair will entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda for claims vouchers totaling $1,148,200.40. First of all, is there any questions for staff before we get into a motion? All right. Commissioner Lawrence, is that a motion or a question? All right, Commissioner Lawrence has a motion to pass the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Kenny, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the consent agenda is adopted. So moving on, approval of meeting minutes for August 8th, 2023, which was a work session, and August 15th, 2023. Are there any questions or for staff or changes that need to be made? All right, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the minutes or approve the minutes.
So,
right.
oh, I'll second it then.
Moved by Commissioner Fernahoff, second by Commissioner Kenny. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on, we have public comment. Is there anyone either online or in attendance that wishes to make a public comment? Is that Commissioner Lawrence would like to make a public comment?
Well, a public question, where is everybody?
I don't know. Commissioner Chan just walked in the door. So
Okay.
we are down two commissioners tonight.
Okay, I might be down too. I came down with COVID last Thursday. I've been pretty miserable for
It's
since
going
then.
around.
Commissioner Teofilak is on his way. So a couple minutes.
All right. We will be to full strength eventually here. Moving on, with no public comments, we'll move on to the fire chief's report. Was that DC Eastman that's giving it to us?
Yeah,
AC
it'll be me
Eastman,
tonight.
sorry. I apologize.
Chief Hovis is actually not here tonight. So real quick, I don't have a whole lot, but because I've got the mic and I'm filling the role, I'll give you just a quick update on property acquisition. To let everybody know, we did give the purchase sale agreement to Hospital District 2 through legal counsel. There's been one meeting between our legal counsel and theirs. There's more dialogue happening, I think, which is good news. As we continue to move forward, I take that as a positive sign. I think our group has been more up to speed on the environmental challenges that go along with that property and the time and some of the things that it takes for us to move forward if we were to purchase the property there at Valley Village. I would say that Hospital Districts 2 commissioners are a little bit further behind, even though we've briefed them on the results of each phase of the environmental work that we've currently done. And it was pretty clear when legal counsel was talking to their legal counsel that they needed to have a better understanding of what we drafted in the PSA, and we talked about that last, and that conversations continue to happen. And so I take that as a positive sign moving forward. Just to let you guys know, a quick update, and I think just like they need to get their arms around what that really does mean. And I'm sure there'll be some more there will eventually be back and forth on the purchase and sale agreement. What does that look like? And when we get to a place where we can bring that back to the board, we will. But that's a quick update of where we are on that piece of property. On the other property that we were looking at, I think we've got some probable or a probable site or probable couple sites to make one site. That work continues. We're not at a place to bring any details back to the board yet. But I would anticipate that's probably something, I don't know, the next 5-6 weeks, maybe we'll have something more formal to bring back to the board on that. But I wanted to let you know that work continues to move. And since I had the ability to give the update and chief report, I will. And I know EMS has some things, but I think Chief Hughes is going to touch on that during his division report, and we'll leave it for that. And if he doesn't catch it all, Sean will pick it up, and I'll let Sean know what I'm talking about when I'm done. So unless you have any questions for me or the rest of staff, that's all I have for you tonight.
All right.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So Chief, maybe I just wasn't focusing enough, but the first property was which property?
The Value Village.
Right, and you're doing what with the purchase and sale agreement?
So
Because we haven't looked at one.
So we drafted a purchase sale agreement based on the stuff you may have been out of town, Commissioner Kenny. I don't recall. So we had a conversation with the board about moving forward with the purchase and sale agreement. And we got authorization to move forward with what that would entail. And obviously some of the details we still need to work through with their counsel. And we're in that process now.
Okay.
We're not at a spot to bring it back to the board as of yet, because it's still all contingent on the board's approval. But we were at a place with Hospital District 2 where they put a definitive date of when they wanted a purchase agreement to continue the process. So we did that, and we're able to brief the board on the challenges we have with the property, the fact that we know what the site is, i.e. where the property boundaries are, and what we're dealing with the release and what does that mean. The challenge is we don't know what happens outside the borders of site, and in the eyes of the release and the EPA and ecology, it's all part of the release. And so what we need to do is get a consent decree and some of the other things to go along with for us to do and purchase the property, which requires a little bit more investigation of how far the extent of the contamination actually goes off the property lines to inform that. And it goes through that process, and what that puts us in a spot is once that's all done, based on sign off by ecology, get the consent decree from Superior Court, and then it releases us from the liabilities because everything then has been done. And there's no ability for somebody to come back after us as the new owners of the property. For a very abbreviated way of a layman talking about things that, quite frankly, Holly and Richard and Matt should be telling you. So we crafted a purchase and sale agreement that encompassed that. The challenge is obviously there's no price in it because we're not sure what that all is yet. As a result of what we find will inform that. And the statute's very clear that about how a governmental entity says property is. They need 3 appraisals, and they can't sell it less than 90% of those appraised values, and all those other pieces, which is all part and highlighted in our version of the purchase sale agreement that went over to them. And we're waiting to see what comes back, and eventually we'll come back to the board for talking about the purchase sale agreement, and final approval actually rests with the board if we decide to move forward or not. So
I didn't hear what the second property was that you were talking about.
So we also, and this was many months ago, authorized Peter to go look at additional site along Alderwood Mall Parkway.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And so I wanted the board to know, because I think the last time we briefed you is the one property we thought that was for sale. It had a 40-foot drop. It was all wetlands and it wasn't going to work. Peter's been doing his due diligence and we found some other sites in that region that will it's not just one, it's a couple. But we're working forward to determine some of the other options to go along with that. And I wanted to let you know we're still working. It hasn't gone off the radar. It's just that one's a little bit more challenging as a result of the first properties we looked at were just not going to work. And there's some sewer issues there. There's no sewer along Alderwood Mall Parkway there when you get south of Fred Meyer. And it required us to talk to Alderwood Water, and there is a way to hook the sewer. And I mean, so there's certain things we had to go through to determine what our options were at that site or that area, geographical area, based on the fact that we were some limited infrastructure. And we've got some of those questions answered. Obviously there's dollars associated with those that we'll have to take into account once we get to a place where we can start making final decisions on what we do with that. But I just wanted the board to know we're working through it. It's just sometimes these take a while, and as you know, there's not a lot of property out there within the area that we're looking. And so Peter's doing a really good work on our behalf. And I just wanted to make sure the board knew we've been doing our due diligence and we're still working, and we just haven't got anything to bring back to you formally. But I would anticipate, I'm hoping by the end of the year, we bring something back with a little bit more detail in it and what that looks like. I'm just not there yet, and Peter's not there yet. So
Thank you.
So actually, I do have follow-up questions. There's two parcels actually across the street from the Fred Meyer. So which one you're pursuing?
there's a handful of lots that are
The
on the
biggest one,
south
yeah.
side. So
I know one parcel is by individuals, and then the other one is by a corporation.
yeah, there's there's not that many parcels between south of the storage units before you get to Maple. So it's in that general area.
But location-wise, I like that location-wise. That's pretty
It's
good.
it's
right?
an ideal location
Yeah.
for an infill fire station for us because it's got access north to
To
164th. It goes north on Ash, covers the south side of Stickney Gap, or Lake Stickney. It goes south. It can get onto Maple. It can get onto 525. I mean, it's actually a really good location to get you access to a lot of places, relatively quickly. So it's got good north-south. It has good east-west, so it's not a bad location. And it's kind of the prime location that we've identified as that area. The problem is you get too far south. Because we did look, right? The challenge is there's not a lot of vacant land. You get too far south, you lose the coverage we need north of 164th. If you go, there's a business complex to the north side of 164th, right? On the east side of Ashway, north of 164th, but that's too far north, and we lose what we need to the south. So right now we're at a spot where I think we can stay what I would say is the ideal geographical area for us, and it's promising. But I guess I want to let you know there's more work for us to do to make sure that it actually will work as a fire station, and it'll be a process that takes a little while.
Because I'm
at the end of
thinking
the day.
way ahead that the whole area, Alderwood Mall, is going to be very dense. Right now, you already have the woods and all the building, right? And then eventually, when we build the Everett one, there will be stations on every mall, right? So that is a really intense, dense population in
Yep.
there. And there will be also a lot of senior citizen building in there.
Yeah, and one of the things we're wanting to make sure we know is the expansion or the widening of Alderwood Mall Parkway heading south. And so we know that they can't go to the east because it's a 40-foot drop off, right?
Mhm.
And so it's going to encringe, and the easement's going to go more to the west. And so there's several factors that we're looking at with regards to that that location or that geographical area. And like I said, we're still working. We don't have all our homework done yet, but
Right.
Peter and his team is working diligently, and I just wanted the board to know it hasn't fallen off the radar and people are still doing the work. I just don't have anything concrete to bring back to you yet.
Okay.
What was the street you guys were talking about? Is that on Alderwood Mall Parkway, basically Manor that turns into Alderwood right there?
Alderwood Mall Parkway, and then
One
it's
sixty-four?
Man, yeah.
it's south of there
Okay.
is the area. Between that and is it Maple? I'm looking at the guys that know, between Maple and
Gotcha.
and 164th on Ash Way is the prime area that we've been looking at, half-mile radius.
Yeah, I
something
know
like
that I was driving past the old Bloom Nursery there across from has finally gone up on the market as well.
Yep.
And that's on the north side of
Yep.
164th.
So we looked at property on the north side at the business park, and the problem is you get north and you lose some of the stuff we need to the south. And so not that those aren't second and third and fourth,
Yeah.
plan
We're
B,
talking
plan
within
A.
about less than a quarter mile in every direction. There's a couple of properties. So
So they're working through it and more to follow. It won't happen as fast as I want it to happen, but there's more to come. Hopefully in the very near future.
all right. Anything else for the chief's report? That would be anything else? All right. Moving on, union report. Looks like we have Mr. Armstrong with us tonight.
Good evening, commissioners. Good
Evening.
evening, staff. I don't have a lot to report to you this evening. After our recent meeting, our executive board met, and we are gearing up to assist where we can with any political action when it comes to candidates and it comes to the potential for Edmonds to come into the RFA. So we're gearing up our guys for that. I'd like to also, I guess I'll take the second just to say how proud I am of the members in this organization to include staff for what we're doing in a department that is growing and is progressive. We run a lot of calls. We've had a lot of really critical calls lately, not just on A shift, but on all the other shifts. And these guys perform at a very, very high level. And I'm extremely proud of all of them. I think we have made quite the name for ourselves in the state of Washington, and we continue to grow. So that's all I have. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to field any.
All right. No questions from anyone in attendance. Mark, it looks like isn't raising a hand either. So thank you very much for your report.
Thanks.
Moving on, first item of unfinished business, we're going to revisit the contract for engineering and architecture for Station 22, and this is for action. Brief introduction there, Chief Eastman.
So again, this is coming before the board tonight for consideration of action. We had I think a pretty good discussion about it at the work session last week. Commissioner Rowland, just so you know, we ran it back. We took the old draft, ran it back. We fixed the exhibits. Exhibit B was removed. We made Exhibit C, Exhibit B. We got rid of the yellow highlight and did the spelling correction. And then I know there's one formatting issue where one of the sub bullets isn't indented as far as the other, but as a result of the process, I kept it. I didn't go back and change it again. So I know there's a formatting issue, but the content, and we corrected what was identified last week. And so this is now before the board for your consideration to authorize the fire chief to sign. And so, when we briefed this last week, we briefed both the B101 and the 102. Just so everybody knows, the 201, the A201, which is one of the exhibits for the B101. So by approving and authorizing the chief to sign the B101, the general conditions for contract construction, the A101, is part of that main document. So I know we briefed them independent when we did, but you only have to take action on the A101 or the B101 because the other document is exhibit in that agreement. So with that, I'll pause and take any questions if you have them.
Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner
I'm a little confused too. On the, so you want document B 101. Then in the back in there's table of articles. Is exhibit A,
Mhm.
which is TCA fee schedule, which is page 21. Right? Okay. 21. And then it said exhibit. And then in the agenda, in the table of articles, exhibit B, A 101, 201 dash 2017. That is the
Second part of this.
second part of it. But it doesn't say except the whole thing exhibit B, right?
Yeah, the whole AIA document A201 is Exhibit B.
Okay, yeah, okay, then exhibit B, basically all the way from all the way, finish it all the way to page 24, 30,
45.
45.
35. And no, it's all the way to the top. Okay, we're using the page 107 of 122 and all the way to 45. That's a page 114 or 122.
Yep, page 114 of 122.
Okay.
Is there a question?
Yeah, the question is good. It looked like the document B 101-207, including both of them. So what's the difference between B 101-2017 versus A 201-2017?
If
So
I-
B1, you can if you want.
Yeah, if I could, so I asked the exact same question last week and finally wrapped my
Right.
head around it. A201, for some reason last week, they included A201 before the B because A comes before B, even though this is kind of a standard form that is being attached as the exhibit. So exhibit B is A201. So they just put it in order this time instead of putting it up front. So the
Right.
actual thing that we are agreeing to is the agreement between the owner, and then the second part is just definitions and terms and conditions and general stuff.
Yeah. But maybe I don't read enough. So what is the total fee? Last time it's $1 million. Where do I see that $1 million?
You don't.
I don't.
No, so we know based on the conversation we had with you, and I want to say that was in June. I don't have the same brain power as Chief Hovis does to remember the exact dates, that we brought kind of a ballpark of what station design up to the point of you have contractors, right? So up the cost up to the point where you get a bid and you have contractors come in to build the station is between 1.2 and 1.4 million. And that covers the design, the engineering, permits, and gets you from that place to when the design and all that set up and prep for them to go to bid, for your contractors to bid on the jobs. That's between 1.2 and 1.4. Now, Commissioner Kenny asked this question. I think Council Paxton answered it very well, is that the architects get paid for hours that they work, and the fee schedule's there. And there's not a quote per se, right? There's not a, this is how much they charge. They also get for the other folks that people do, because they have contractors that will come in, engineers and things that do the work, and they get 15% above that. Now we will get an idea. And once again, I'm new to this process, right? I've never done it before. And there's a couple of you that have built a couple stations actually from your seat. That will have I know the range, it's between 1.2 and 1.4. One of the things we talked about last week is in the facilities plan, we're looking at with our, and I'm not talking infill fire stations, we're looking at our existing fire stations. We have 5, including 20. Obviously, I understand that's an Edmond station that are tear down rebuilds. We do have an infill fire station or two, and for the most part, they're all neighborhood fire stations that would need an engine and a medic unit in some point in time in the future to meet the needs that we've identified thus far. And so one of the things that I think staff would do with TCA is what station design. And if you recall, looking at the facilities plan, we've got, a design, a 2-story design with drive-through, is 2-story design without, a Rambler design with drive-through, a Rambler design without, with back in. And the goal would be, to the best of our ability, to get the same general station at those sites. At least that's my vision. And I think there's some benefits for us with that, to do that. Now, but realizing this is for Station 22 and Station 22 only. And if we decide somewhere in the near future, we're going to go do another station, we will bring you the same template. We'll have a conversation about the next station we're going to do. We'll approve this agreement for that station. And we'll do that for every process we do, at least in the short term, because we still have a lot of conversation that we need to have about where we're going with the facilities plan and, how we're actually going to do that. Then that's a conversation we'll be having probably in the not too distant future.
I mean, we have a discussion last meeting too. I just feel uncomfortable, whatever time it takes.
Mhm.
But they are the one who control whatever time. So somehow we don't have a ceiling or whatever type of thing. So that's my concern. I'm really not, this is the first time ever, unless we get 2-step, like give them said exploring what type we want and then decide what the term is.
If I may piggyback on that, the Article 9.2 in the second document there, the one that talks about kind of all the terms and conditions, it references the ability to have a guaranteed maximum price. This is in 9.1 or 2.1, page 28 of that document, page 97 of the packet. So it does look like they have a not to exceed type mechanism, but it doesn't sound like that's been negotiated. Is that correct?
Well, so the A to the one we're going to do is not the agreement between the owner and architect.
Turn on the mic.
Sorry, that's not the actual agreement between the owner and the architect, which is the B101.
I understand.
That's the document that's related back to the conditions of the contract for construction.
So my question is, seeing as how the architect has provisions for a guaranteed maximum price, basically a not to exceed type clause, which is, I think, what.
No, I think
Commissioner-
that's really the construction, not the architect. Right now, we're signing a contract. The
I
architect.
understand that.
So, yeah.
But what I'm saying is the architectural firm here has, at least in their practice, the use of a guaranteed maximum price, they're calling it. But it doesn't seem like that's part of the agreement that we're having with them. And
Correct.
to Commissioner Chan, and I think Commissioner Kenny's point, they're worried about, we're getting a range of 1.2 to 1.4, but there is nothing in the contract that says it won't go over 1.4 or that there's anything additional that needs to be done once we get to that point.
So the challenge we have right now is we don't know what station we're building to actually have them inform us of a price to architect or engineer it.
I thought this is station 22.
It is, but we have 6 or 7 different styles of stations, right? We still have the conversation, is it drive through or is it back in bay? We have the conversation of, is it roll up doors or is it bifold door? There's several other pieces that need to be talked about for them to, right now, we're not sure. I have an idea and we're lucky TCA does know what we're talking about, but there are some aspects of the fire station, i.e. drive-through bay, no drive-through bay. There's, bifold doors, no bifold door, roll-up doors. And I know not everybody's got those concerns. And so in order for us to go down that path with them, they kind of need to know what we want in a fire station, what we don't want in a fire station. Do you want meeting rooms? Do we not want meeting rooms? Are we absolutely going to have drive-through bays? Or are we not going to have drive-through bays? Because all that takes into account the engineering and all the things we do, right? And so I've not done this process before. I have talked to Brian and once we have some of those initial meetings, he gets quotes for folks who do the engineering work that we will see. I can't imagine that I can't ask for a ballpark range of what's it's going to take them to draft the plans and do the work in generalities and have them give that to us. The problem is we haven't had any of those conversations to determine what the station actually is or isn't going to be, right? This is step one. And so, and I'm going to be honest, I've not done this before. My conversation with Brian is if we have whatever the preliminary meetings go about what we want the stations to be, then I can go and say, okay, give me an estimate of cost, because they have to go, and they have engineers and all these other folks that do the work. They understand they'll get prices for it, and we'll get that information back. And so it's not, I guess I'm going to say it's not like they just get to go, you know, here's the free and go. I think there's a checks and balance there. And
Well, that's not going back last meeting I discussed, and which had 2-stage. Right now you're asking board to basically sign a contract without knowing what it is, right? Because we don't know what kind of station it is. To me, that should be an exploration. We pay them certain time, discussions and everything else. And then once we decide what kind of station we need, and I would like to see a really concrete, okay, this kind of station, how much is the architecture fees? So for that reason, I'm not comfortable, from my own opinions, not vote yes on that, because I think there's no limit in there. So I'm uncomfortable unless we break it to 2 segments to do it.
I'll piggyback on this for a second. I want to recognize Liaison Hoffman and then Commissioner Kenny.
Yeah.
And then Commissioner Lawrence.
Assistant Chief Eastman, perhaps it would be helpful if the commission understood the difference between a request for qualifications, which is what you're doing, as opposed to a request for a proposal, which would have a somewhat hard set price. Because I believe the request for qualifications is when you don't know the final answer and the outcome, you're asking for qualifications for a company and an hourly price for that in order to get the answer to where you're going, right? Is that about the right thing? Or maybe you can expand
no,
on that.
that's the process we actually went down. You're correct.
But this isn't the response to the request for qualifications. This is the next step after we did the request for qualifications and selected the architecture from that we wanted to go with. Okay. All right. Commissioner Kenny?
Yes, thank you. Chief Eastman. So I'm thinking about the process, and I'm thinking about the trains leaving the station now. This gets approved tonight. And there's an essential question that I've asked previously, which I haven't gotten an answer from staff regarding, and that is, so who's actually going to ride herd on the creation of the station? And there are more stations to come. So as an example, Chief Maddox was that person in the past. And so as the architects start to have questions and they engage engineers and the engineers have questions, and then we're ready for a contractor and they have questions, there has to be somebody from the staff, a firefighter, all the way up to the fire chief, could be somebody someplace in between or either end, that's going to be that liaison that does the station. And if they do this station, then there's a significant chance they're going to do the next station and the next station after that. And so there could be a lot of work for years to come on that. So as I'm thinking about that, I haven't heard anything about, so who's actually going to be the person that's liaising with on this, with all of the various individuals it takes to build a station? And I was curious if you might opine on that.
So I think I'm part of that team, at least in the short term. I think James Curtis, our logistic chief, is part of that team. I think Chief Isotale is part of that team as it sits today. I think because of the expertise we don't have, that having some form of, and I don't know how this worked with Station 19, but I know Ray Chief Maddox was kind of the one that the buck stopped with the RFA. But we had a project manager and we had some other folks that that ran certain things to ground. And then when they needed expertise, they'd come to Ray and Ray would do that. I see that being kind of the same path we go down as a result of needing to have somebody and to start with 22 because we don't know what the long range plans is that we would use it as a consultant scenario because there's lots of questions with the rest of the facilities plan. I know, we've had conversations in the past. Do we hire somebody to do that based on what the copy facilities plan is? I would say not today because we don't know where we're going to get the dollars. We don't know how in depth we're going to get. And I think we'll have some of this conversation on Saturday is with all the other challenges we have with, the benefit charge need to be renewed and the EMS levy being renewed and lid lifts and stuff. When does this fit? And one scenario in my mind, you've got, 26, 27, maybe. And then you potentially have another scenario where you're not looking at debt service or geo bond until 2030. So where I sit today would be myself, Jason, and James. And the reason that is we got 3 deep and everybody knows I'm looking to retire. Right. And so there's a passing of the batons and you have 2 people. And I think we'd add a third. So we're 3 deep in that scenario for what we're talking about. I think we'd have a consultant or a project manager that we'd work as part of what we do, at least with Station 22. That does a couple things for us. One, it gets our teeth wet for us that have never done it before, the challenges affiliated with it. And then I think there'll be a much longer conversation based on where we go with the facilities plan and how, for example, if we say, okay, we're going to do the facilities plan, we're going to borrow the money to complete A to Z. My guess is that's probably a 15-year job and you're probably better off going and hiring somebody to manage that on our behalf. And at that point, it's money well spent.
All right.
Today, I don't think it is. To answer your question, I think we would do that in the short term.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kenny, question, since you two have been through this at least once, at what point in this process before did we have someone selected? Was that ahead of going to the architecture firm or is that once we got through it?
Well, I'm looking at it from the back end. So Ray Maddox was always the chief,
Okay,
the liaison, the person that was handling it. I don't remember on the front end
gotcha.
at what point he was engaged with the process.
I think before we already discussed what kind of station we want, we know what it is, and then we're engaging the architect versus now we're just engaging architect because of capital facility planning and everything else kind of all mixed up in here.
Understood. All right. Anything else, Commissioner Kenny? Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes, our representative from Mount Lake Terrace, I think, summed it up pretty well. I understood it. Totally don't understand where Commissioner Chan's coming from. Because you're saying that Chief, that the way I understand it is that we need the architectural company to help us figure out what station we need. I think that's been said like 30 times. Am I correct? Did I hear it wrong 30 times?
No, I think there are some decisions that need to be made. Obviously the current architecture firm TCA knows the site that we're looking at building, right? But there are some options, i.e., do we want to drive through bay? Do we do back in bays? And I go back to bifold doors or roll up doors because those change.
You need help from TCA.
Yeah.
You don't have the expertise. It's as simple as that. We're just hiring them per hour so that they can help you, the staff, figure out, okay, let's settle on this design. And then you would come to the board and say, we've kind of settled on this design. Do I got that right?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think Commissioner Lawrence, that there's some fundamental things that the board needs to weigh in on as we have this conversation with TCA. For example, Is the board moving forward at the stations that we build or significantly remodel? Are they going to have or community rooms, or are they not? Or some are, some aren't. In the past, commissioners have had varying opinions, some very, very strong, some not so strong about the station has to have drive-through bays, or the station, because it's cheaper, should have back-in bays. I think there's some general conversations that as we talk about designing Station 22, that there's input needed from the board, right? And it's not a lot of things, but some of them are significant. Officials full doors. Changes the initial cost of the station up front, adds cost of the station, requires different engineering, different architecture work to be done, right? Which then
Hold on,
plays-
hold
Go
on a
ahead.
second. But yes, you would come to the board and say, okay, what do you guys think? But you need TCA to help you get to that point, or you don't need TCA to come to the board about certain
Well,
things.
no,
I'm
I would say
more
we
confused
do.
than
We
go
do
on.
need TCA because we got a piece of property
Yeah.
that we need to know what we're talking about actually fits on that property. So yeah, there is a component that TCA needs to be involved in,
Okay,
right? To get us to this place, because if the board goes, we want drive-through bays, and TCA goes, you can't build a fire station with drive-through bays on that site, you don't have enough room,
right,
then
right.
that's not an option for us, and I can't make that call.
Okay,
I need
okay,
help from
so
experts to do that.
So it just gets down to, it's that we need to hire TCA. It's on an hourly basis. And to help us get to that point, any point, the first point, the first base. I get it. I don't know why anybody else doesn't get it. We've been over this, so we need TCA to help get the first base. Okay, is that am I got it right? Could you say yes, you got it right? Or
Yes.
no, you're goofy. Okay, all right. So, all right, very good. Thank you.
All right. I guess from what I'm understanding, that maybe the hang up here is that this document covers an agreement for the entire lifetime of the project. We're talking about that we don't know what the project's going to be, so we're kind of doing the assessment type phase of this entire project first, and then we'll have a better idea of what the rest of the project looks like as far as costs and everything else. In the document itself, though, it talks about the fact the costs are set out in the initial information, but there's nothing about cost in there. It refers back to the second document here as being part of the initial information, but there's nothing in there again of any sort of cost controls or anything like that. As I said before, looks like the architect does have the ability to say, we can, at the beginning of this, agree that we're not going to exceed a certain price without a change order and you approving it, but that hasn't been done.
Can
I
we
don't know.
eliminate that part from the
What's that?
It's confusing everybody. Can we just eliminate that? I mean, why don't we make this thing really simple per hour? You know, we hire per hour. Just why we have the darn long contract that's confusing everybody and maybe gonna make it so you don't get a vote for this thing.
I guess my question would be, if we were to go with everything that we wanted that cost the most money, right? You talked about roll-up doors, you talked about other things. The architect could say, okay, if you went with all these things, we're estimating to do an architecture for all of this, it would cost maximum of 1.4. You already gave the kind of that range. Is there a way that we can go to the architect and say, can we do this with a guaranteed maximum price or with a stipulation saying not to exceed without approval 1.4 million or whatever the case may be? Is that something that we could do? Because I think that might get the rest of the ones that may be uncomfortable with this. Seeing how it says that we're agreeing to a cost that isn't in here. We're agreeing to a service that is still a blank. I can at least understand
So I
some of
think-
their concerns.
So I'm gonna look at one of the liaisons because I know he's done this before. We did an RFQ, request for quals. We didn't do an RFP. And we're going down the path of an RFP. And architects don't do that, to my knowledge, right? That's not how my understanding is that's not how that works. Architects, the process we're doing is the process that's historically done. Right. And I apologize. I probably should add Matt here because I'm way outside my area of expertise. Right. And so when the question got asked, when Commissioner Kenny brought up the question of cost, Matt explained it. And I guess I would just say that to answer your question, Commissioner Rowling, I don't know. I just know that we went through their qualifications and there's things that are going to inform what it costs to design the station that we haven't had the conversation with them to do. So I'm not so sure we actually can do that. I think what we can do, and I've had this conversation with Brian, is once we meet with them, get a general idea of drive-through, not drive-through, by just the simple, are we going to put a community room? Not. We can get, then they can say, okay, now, and we look at the stations that we've already pre-designed. We know the square footage we need. Brian can say this one fits. So you have the option. You can do drive-through or you can't. We'll have some conversation with the board about some of the things that we can do. Brian will inform what the cost of construction is. Like bifold doors is about an increase of about $1.2 million, for example.
But the
Then-
increase to, I guess my question is the increase to what the architect's amount of work to do between any of those decisions would not be significant. The cost of the building would be affected, but the cost of what takes the architect to do all the architecture work and draw up the plans and do all the seismic or whatever probably wouldn't be at millions more, right?
Yeah, I don't know, right? I'm assuming not millions more, right? But I think there may be the things where architects have to do some different things that take more time
Mhm,
as a result of, or the engineers need to do more work as a result of,
mhm.
right? I don't think, I mean, Brian knows us enough to know what we're thinking. And when he gave me the original range of 1.2 to 1.4, that's pretty common. And that is fairly common. So I don't know about in this stage going and doing that, but I will say that we will know, because I'm going to ask him, now that you know this, give me an estimate for the cost of the work you do. He'll at that point in time he'll have gotten quotes from his engineers to do the work they do. And we'll have all that put together and say, here you go. We can do all that before the work starts.
The range that you gave was about $200,000
Yep.
between the two,
Yep.
which equates out to, if they had their most expensive asset on it, 1,000 hours, basically a half year extra work between the bottom and the top, right?
Yeah.
I guess knowing that this isn't an urgent ask right now, to me, it might make sense to go back to them and ask, is there a ceiling that you could put on this?
I can always ask.
And then if we can get that in there, because again, it isn't something that isn't uncommon because they do have a special word even for it. If it's something that they would be willing to do, that might give us, even if it is a 1.5 or something like above that original range that gives them a headway, it might be enough to, give the peace of mind for us, the taxpayers, the whole 9 yards, to know where this project is going.
So the challenge with that is we've taken an RFQ and put a cost to it, and that's not how RFQs work. So I don't know where that's at. I need to find out, right?
Okay.
My gut tells me that's not what you do. Because we didn't do an RFP for architecture work, people don't, right? So I don't have a good answer for you. As a result of, RFQ versus RFP are two very different things.
Understood.
And they're set up very different, where if an RFP comes back and gives you the cost to do the work, RFQ does not. And what we're artificially doing is having the RFQ put in a cost of doing work. And I don't know where that line is. I don't have enough experience to know by doing that how we cross the line, yes or no. I
That's fair.
gotta go ask folks that are smarter and brighter than me to go down that path.
Commissioner Todd.
Let me take another try at this. So
Yes.
this is basically RFQ you've picked TCA as the people you want to dance with. These are the terms under which you're going to dance with them. So they're contractual terms about what you're going to do, what you're not going to do. You're not going to go off and say, go spend money and come up with a design. You're going to have a conversation with them about the needs that apply to the site, whether you want to have, what kind of doors you want, how many bedrooms you want, what kind of kitchen fixtures you want. That's an iterative process where together, between your design requirements and their expertise, you're going to develop first kind of a scope for this whole thing that says it's going to be this many square feet, this many thousand square feet, and this kind of construction quality. That's going to give you an idea of where you're headed overall in the projects. I think you were saying the board's going to check in. You're saying we're headed for, we could do a $15 million station, or we could do a $20 million station with these general features. What do you guys think? And that's why I think the staff is coming to you and saying you will be engaged, because it depends on the overall product. The way you waste money with the architect is to go in there and say, start designing something for this site and then changing to a different site, or starting with this thing and going, we're going to put in an engine in and an aid car, and then go like, oh, we want to add one more truck to it. So this board and the agency together have to figure out what the boundaries are. Otherwise, these guys will waste money at $100 to $200 per hour. So you're correct. Commissioner Kenny is correct that it's important to have somebody who is kind of the keeper of the definition of what you want. And I think Chief Eastman is saying that you don't happen to have this legacy person that in the past. So it's going to be kind of a team effort, but you got to get into this somehow. And these guys aren't going to work for free. They work for free to give you a proposal. And now they need to be paid $100 to $200 an hour to talk to you some more. So you can't go get the will written. You can pick the guy you're going to have you write your will, but you can't, he's not going to tell you what the whole price is until you settle down and tell him what you really want and how many iterations you're going to go through. But you've picked him, or these guys as the ones you want to work
The
with.
other
Does
thing
that
is,
help?
They know we have multiple buildings to build. I'm pretty sure they're not going to run away on a building knowing there's 6 more to be done. I mean, the other piece of this is we know them, we have a relationship with them. They know, because they helped draft the facilities plan. They know what the facilities plan is. And if they do run away, then that gives us perfect reason to say we're out and we'll get somebody else. We have the right to do that anytime. So I understand what everybody's saying. I just knowing that we have 5 stations that we currently operate under that are in need of tear down rebuild, I don't see them running away. And I see if we do the work we're doing and bring dollars and cents back based on these conversations, the board will have a very clear understanding of what the architect, engineering, and permitting process is going to cost. And like I said, some of these challenges that they're dealing is, we talked about it when we brought this up to begin with, is the state of the economy right now is crazy. And what they could do engineering work for last month versus what they do engineering work for this month can be drastically different because it's the whim of the month based on the economy. So if the board wants me to go and see if we can do that work, I will more than happy to go back and have a conversation with legal to make sure that we don't cross over a line we're not supposed to cross over, and report back the first meeting next week or next month, and see where that goes. And if that's the will of the board.
Yeah, I guess the thing that had, I'll finish my turn here and then, sorry. The thing that just, I guess, has me is when I'm reading this, there's a lot of things referenced in here that aren't in here. Like the contract sum is stated in the agreement. It's not, but there is the section where the contract is based on stipulated sum or guaranteed maximum price. If this isn't done by stipulated sum or maximum price and it's just hourly, I just want to know that these references that are in these documents saying that things that are supposed to be in here that I can't find anywhere in here, especially when they deal with prices, just got me a little questioning.
But you're referring to those constraints of cost in the A201.
Mhm.
It's not the B101. They're 2 different documents.
I understand
Right,
that.
so-
I'm just saying that it
but-
says in this initial agreement that there's a contract sum, but there's not. That it's
But-
just seems incomplete, but maybe it's not.
But
because
there,
there's a-
but you can't cross pollinate the A201 with the B101 because they're 2 separate documents for 2 separate purposes.
But B101 underneath cost of work says that the cost is defined in the initial introduction, which is 101, which refers to that second document. So that's what I'm saying. The cost of the work in the first document doesn't have a cost. There's no budget. It does refer to a budget. There's no budget in here. It says in preparing estimates of the cost of work. So is it just,
I think that's your fee schedule exhibit. So they gave you an hourly fee
gotcha, so
schedule.
it's
exhibit.
just hourly and
Yeah.
we're paying for as many hours as we use. And if we cut bait halfway through, I did look at the termination section of it. I guess that I think is where the confusion is because there's contract sums, is referring to things that maybe aren't applicable. And I think if our lawyer team was on the phone, we could definitely get those things ironed
Well,
out
I,
real
I
quick,
know,
but-
I know Matt talked about this at the last meeting because I know Jim specifically asked the question. And so I know Matt at least tried to explain this component at the last meeting at the work session.
Mhm.
And I apologize. I'm just not as well versed
I understand.
and I truly don't want to misspeak. Because I relied on Richard and Matt to go through the process of this because it's actually that foreign to me. I mean, I understand it enough to do what I'm doing today, but to answer some of these questions like that, they're way outside. And I need to get some counsel from them if we're gonna or ask for some things to be different in the agreements at the end
Well,
of the day, right?
You're not alone, as you can tell, it's something that's foreign to some of us as well. So I think we're all just trying to get our heads wrapped around it and trying to do so in a deliberative way so that we can say, yeah, we understood what we were signing off on. So is there Commissioner Lawrence? I thought there was, hold on a second, was there Commissioner Liaison Hoffman? Did you have something
David's
else?
got it.
No, I
I
think
just-
I chipped in. I think
Okay.
Liaison Todd expressed it well. You just picked somebody you wanted to dance with and they gave you an hourly fee to do that. It's not the same as saying it's gonna cost $100 at the end of the day. You know, that's a different contract. That's an RFP. And I think that summed it up really well.
Well,
Commissioner Lawrence?
Yeah, David, you can go first.
well, I think it's much, rather than try to, I really don't like the getting a tournament maker. Why don't we go back to old, this is your first time, but in the past, why don't you invite them to come in and talk about it and what the input from the board, you know, what kind of station we want. And that's why, remember, when we had that discussion with the old board, we all have discussion, someone want drive-through, we don't want drive-through, and blah, blah, blah. And they already have a more clear understanding what the board really has to be decided, what kind of building we want. Of course, architecture, is it possible or not? I think much easier trying to, like you said, pay someone to dance now and then see what we really want, right? And decide what kind of building. And then we sign it much more concise. So it had to go to 2 stages, not 1 stage.
But
from my
I will,
opinion.
but I can't imagine TCA did that with you without an agreement the last time they had the
Well,
conversation.
let's have agreement. Let's have agreement, have a discussion. Just pay them as you go, come to the meeting, right? Because
So
again,
here's
let me
the challenge.
let me finish my thoughts in here, okay? I do not like the reasoning, wow, they know us well, they won't take us away. This is why you have contract. That's why, you know, you cannot, because the personnel can change, everything else. Yes, we'll deal with them a lot. I'm not saying that they're not taking advantage or not advantages, but a contract is why we need a contract to do that. So that's my experience. We have been doing, and Fire District 1, that's how we did it. I think that's a much better separate two in there.
Right. Commissioner Lawrence?
Yes,
Please.
I'm not sure that I would want to bring this to a vote. I would tonight don't know if we have the votes to pass it. I think there's definitely some confusion about all what the lawyer wrote up. But but I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, I will vote yes if we go to a vote tonight. But the concern that Mike Todd brought up, his thoughts about there isn't the point man on this. There isn't the project manager. It's a committee at this point, and we don't know as the board who's gonna be the guy on top of this that really, truly, you know, do we have to hire somebody? So that concerns me. That concerns me. And I'm sure that the staff will can alleviate those concerns, I'm sure in due time. Anyway, that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you. Hopefully, and I'm gonna be having to leave early because I'm semi-dead. Okay.
Commissioner Daniels.
So I came in late, but I'm curious about project manager process. So we're gonna pick an individual to oversee this. Has one already been selected?
So, like we talked about, I think myself, James and Jason would be the point of contacts for the fire department.
Okay.
And I've talked briefly with legal and briefly, where part of where we move forward, is we can bring in a project managing consultant to actually do that has expertise and do that work very similar. And I can't remember the name of the company that did it for Chief Maddox. I can see the guy's face. I see the guy's face, but I can't remember the company that did it. And it was part of, and I, once again, I'm talking a little bit out of school. I want to say at least with, Station 10, if I'm not mistaken, it was part of the RFP for building construction, all that, and they needed a project manager was a component of that, or we did that independent. I don't recall. And so, but we had somebody that was specifically brought in as a consultant to do the project management work and work with Chief Maddox. You're right, because of there's certain expertise in building that none of us have, that none of us are going to get. So you bring in a consultant to help you with that, to help be your advocate for the construction company that's building it. And there's people that do that work and I mean, they're out there and there's people that do that and that's their job. I think that's how I would recommend we do this for this first project, right? I think, like we talked about before, if we get the facilities plan and we get it, the engine moving in full swing, and we start doing some things very different, and we start having 1 or 2 projects a year, right? And I'm just gonna say, let's say we do all 14 projects in the facilities plan, and we take 15 years or 16 years to do it, because that's not unrealistic, or 20 years to do it. Once again, not unrealistic. I mean, that's a project going full time for 20 years or more. If we get to that place, I think I think our conversation would be very different. We have a plan, we know where the funding was coming from. And at that point, it may be beneficial for us to hire somebody that actually does that for a living and hire them and have them be on staff, you know, and anticipate we're just going to have them here for the next 20 years. If they stay for 30, we'll find work to do, or we do a contract with them and it's I don't know. There's several ways to skin that cat. I don't think I would go down that path though with one project today, with the potential of having a 4 or 5 year gap before we're building another station. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we're better off having a consultant to help staff make sure we don't get burned, or you know, we don't know what we don't know, and they can help at least to start. I think the conversation, this will be, you know, I'm saying 2-3 years from now, about what the long-term plan is. And I think there'll be other people sitting in my seat. Some of you will be here and some of you won't. And we'll have that conversation. And I think depending on the plan that we come up with and what we want to do organizationally, I think we'll drive the conversation about project management and what actually does make sense for the RFA when we know what that is. And right now we don't. So that's how I would do it to start, because I think it gives us the expertise we need, knowing I don't have it, James doesn't have it, and Jason doesn't have it. And it may be a little bit more expensive than having an FTE, but if we hire somebody with that expertise, they sit and do nothing until we decide to do it, or maybe we don't ever do it. Now we've got somebody we can't use. So does that answer?
It does.
What
Thank
you're
you.
thinking?
You reminded me that I believe Snow 911 contracted a project manager, a firm. I want to say OIC, but I could be wrong. And so I think that would be a good path for us to travel, to make sure that once the train left the station, that it's staying on the tracks and not getting sidetracked. So then that would be a suggestion that I would have, would be to also entertain that conversation about contracting somebody to help with all this stuff. What is the timeline for this? So if we don't vote on this tonight, but we push it out to the next meeting, is there going to be any negative repercussions?
Pushes everything out a month. So no,
Okay.
I think we're looking at 12 to 16 months to do the architectural design, engineering, and the permit process through the county. Right? I think that's the timeline we're talking about, and there's other folks that deal with this far more than I do.
Okay, so that would be my suggestion, is to find a contract PM to have that conversation at the next meeting to try and alleviate some of these questions that are coming from other board members. And I think that I agree with Commissioner Lawrence. I'm not sure that we're gonna get the votes tonight to get this through. And I believe at the next meeting, we'll have legal here as well to answer some other questions. So,
I would say I think we're premature on the project manager,
okay,
right? Because the project manager you need when you start doing construction. So I think you're looking at project management here in 12 to 14 months to get them on board. Once you know what the plans are, because we don't need a project manager to do the architecture work, the engineering work, and you know, the RFP for the contract. We don't need them for that work or get them through the permit process. What we need them for is when we start, and I don't know what the timeline is, but when we start getting ready to break ground is when we need the project manager, and probably a little bit before then, to do the work. So I think we're premature from my perspective, we're premature on the project manager. I think you're talking probably 12 months from now that we'll be having a conversation about, or start the process, do whatever process it is to do that, get them, bring them in, build a relationship, get introductions, and then hopefully shortly thereafter we'll be breaking ground, and you know, a year and a half later, 22 staff. So
all right,
that would be my suggestion, just
Thank
because
you.
I don't think we're ready for it yet.
okay, thank you. Liaison Swisher and Liaison Todd have their hand up.
No, I agree, not working, but I think we can invite the TCA to come to next meeting, figure out what we need. But I think on the workshop and this Friday, I think it's not premature, because right now you need someone who know building, because you continuous maintenance on all different buildings and everything else. So that person is good in construction, because our deputy chief, we need to pay them too. Their time, is just as much as valuable as this coordinator. So I think it's not premature to me to hire someone like that, because I really hate to see again, we have immediate, like 11, we have suddenly leaking water. So that person should really able to coordinate all that stuff.
All right, Liaison Swisher.
Well,
There we go.
having been on the other side of the table when one of your stations was built, I will say that you definitely need a project manager. No disrespect to the person from your agency that was overseeing the project in Briar. There came a point in time in that project where your people who did not know construction, like those of us within the city, know how construction has to be handled. Our mayor was not available at the time, and I was the person who had to go into the conference room and inform that person that no, you would either fix the wall or you would not get a certificate of occupancy for that station. So yes, at some point, I don't know that it's now, I agree with Bob, going through the architecture portion, you don't need a project manager. But once you start building buildings, you need a experienced building person overseeing your project. These guys don't need it added to their plate. Their expertise is in fire and safety and saving lives. Let them continue to do that. Hire yourself a body at some point, whether that's a firm or a person who works here full-time. Get that person, because I will tell you, having been on the other side of that table, there was a lot of times that it was a nightmare, and we really didn't like you guys very much during that point in time, because you made our lives very difficult. We were arguing with architects, with fire chiefs, and nobody was listening to the fact that what was being built was not constructed where life safety was concerned, and that we were not going to accept it until it was corrected. So that's just my 2 cents from having sat on the other side of the table from you guys.
Thank you. Feedback is always appreciated, especially when it's unvarnished. Was there anything else, Commissioner Todd, or I'm sorry, Liaison Todd or Hoffman or Commissioner Teal'c?
Maybe we beat this to death, but I'm thinking that maybe the Commissioner Chan's suggestion, it sounds like we just don't understand collectively, we don't understand the process well enough. This is a design, bid, build contract. What you're trying to do is get to that design stage with these guys. You put it out to bid, you get a bid back, you accept that for a construction contract, and that's when you hire a construction manager to manage that. It might be somebody who works for TCA, it might be somebody different, but that is the manager who knows construction and knows codes and knows building processes. And so that's the person we're talking about. So you got to get through this design phase first. You got to get a bid you like for X million dollars to bid the building for construction, and then you hire a construction manager. You don't hire the same company that's doing the construction. You need somebody to represent you as owners, but it needs to be somebody in the building trades. The thing might help with these guys. I think the trick is my sense is you don't have a particular site yet, right?
We have the new site at Station 22. So
For
we
this
know
one-
the
so
site.
this is
this
set,
one's
okay.
gonna- Mhm.
But you need some expertise from an architect to say what works on that site. This configuration will fit or this won't. And so I think this is a way to get those people on staff to work with you as owners of this. You're saying we're dreaming about a kitchen with a skylight and some cabinets and marble floors. And they're going to say, that's great, except for you can't fit that size right here. So you need somebody at that level to settle down on your definitions of what you want in your new kitchen. You guys know what you want in your kitchen. They know what they can build and what will cost, what approximate cost will be. And then they can go off and do the design. You very easily can say to them, here's a task order that we want. Don't want you to spend more than this many hours, this much time during that conceptual phase where you're trying to design that thing. And it sounds like maybe that having them come and talk about the phases that get you to a design would be helpful. So don't feel like you're approving $1.2 million. You need to get to a point of what is this thing basically going to look like and agree to that. And then they will come back and say, okay, it's going to take us about this many hours, and you'll have more certainty along the way. And I think you're feeling this is a very, very standard contract. This is the one that architects use all the time. It feels kind of constraining, but there could be more details in here in that section 1 that says, we're going to build station X to X, this many square feet, this general configuration, and then you'd probably feel more comfortable. Right now it's really loose because that hasn't been written down. That may be in another document, because this is the advantages of the same firm that's talked to you in the past about general requirements. And so maybe that's also what's kind of missing here is the connection between the two.
And the other thing
Thanks.
is we went out for a 5-year, potentially 5 or 6 sites too, right? So we did some very specific things with RFQ that limit some of that as a result of that, right? So that's, and like I said, I know that Richard and Matt marked up that document a lot. From their perspective, from the draft language, and TCA accepted all but the one we talked about last week. So I'm like I said, I'm like a fish out of water. I can't speak to some of those things. And we agreed originally we were going down the path that we were going to put, 5 different stations that we've identified as the order, and we chose not to do that. We're coming back to the board each time. I think there's some good things about that kind of checks and balance for all the things we're talking about here. But this general contract that we have will be the one we will use moving forward, unless we change it or we go down a different path for whatever the next site is. The next site is, it falls within a 5-year period. So there's some things that as the process we went down, some of that of what you're talking about probably is not in there because of the process we went down. And the global look we're doing, trying to get an RFQ and an architect for, potentially the next 5 years as we implement the facilities plan.
So I'm suggesting there's enough new people, me included, and 2 more even newer, that weren't down that process. So maybe rolling back and reminding everybody what that process was and making it clear that it's just for the first one is all we're really talking about here.
Yeah.
Don't complicate this with the future because this group is still kind of on a teetery platform. So I would focus on going back to where you were for this station. If you got the site picked, that's great. Remind people what the description was there. Maybe people would feel more comfortable, but I agree having the consultant come or the architect come in and talking about the process might be helpful because these guys could look them square in the eye and I get it.
Yeah, and as I've been looking at this, some of those clauses that I've been most confused about as I'm reading through this, it almost seems like they have them in there, but they're not being used in this circumstance. It was like things that don't apply, but are in there when you do it this way, but we're not doing it that way. But we don't know that we're not doing it that way because we're amateurs at the legalese, so to speak. Well, we have one professional lawyer on the board.
Hey, architects speak a very different language. So if you don't speak their language, and Commissioner Kenny, I don't know, but I don't think you speak architect either. And so I mean, it is there and what I didn't realize is this contract is very similar to, because you go through, just so everybody knows, when we did this, I got a draft that we redlined. The first one we had didn't have draft on it. So we did all the work, sent it back to get it through the company. I mean, you got to pay to get a PDF back of the agreement that you and the architects agreed to. Well, they wouldn't do it because they didn't say draft on it, and they say we were pirating their stuff, right? So we had to redo it. And what happens is AIA is a I don't understand how this works, but you in this state, my understanding is you don't have contracts with architects that don't go through AIA or IIA is my understanding. And but you draft it, you get their draft, you make edit, you can make the edits you need to make, but there's certain things that are generalized in here. And some of that I believe is state driven, if I'm not mistaken. And then it goes back to this company, and for $99, they take the draft, your red lines, and they pop out a draft document, it's a PDF, and that's how you get it back. So you can't edit it. And they keep them all. It's the strangest thing that I've never seen. And so it's a very interesting process. That's nothing I've ever done before. I mean, we usually draft our own contracts and draft them however we want. In this scenario, almost everybody, and I'm not familiar with what WashDOT uses this agreement, and it's very scriptive. And there are RCW, I mean, there are other things that go along with it that make it to where some of the flexibility isn't what I'm used to. I relied on Richard and Matt a lot on this one as a result of the process. So thanks for being patient with me as a result of not having the expertise that in this scenario specific, because I tend to know my stuff better than this. And this is one that it's just not something I do a lot of, and I'm learning as we go too. So I appreciate your patience with the topic in general.
Commissioner Lawrence, I'll call on you in just a second. I just want to say, I will say that throughout this conversation, I've gotten more comfortable than I was when we first started. I would also say that it does sound like there's some good ideas about just waiting a little bit longer and getting everybody all on the same page so that we don't have, different levels of confidence in this. And
Staff has no issue with that.
Okay.
And I apologize. I didn't think we were I didn't predict this. And if I would have, I'd have had Matt or Richard here to help answer at least the legal side. Once again, so from a staff's perspective, I apologize for that, because we probably should have been a little bit more forward thinking and made that happen. And I apologize on behalf of staff for that.
And I thought more of the blanks that we talked about last week would be filled in. So it's just, different expectations. Commissioner Lawrence, I think you're the last hand up.
Yeah. Chief Eastman, hold on to your chair. I'm probably going to shock you to death here. But I think David Chan had a pretty good idea there that I'd like to have an answer to, not tonight, but check around and with the staff. Could we use a project level type person for all the other stuff we need? that we could hire because why not, to have the expert right here, right now, well, as soon as we could hire someone that has the ability. I'd sure like staff to give that David's thoughts, ideas, some thought and have a response there next week as part of the continued discussion here. Yeah.
Commissioner Teofilak. Thank you, Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, I feel comfortable voting yes if we were to have this set up as a vote. I think Liaison Todd made a good point that we're just paying to just dance and talk more. And Liaison Hoffman hasn't raised any concerns. I feel like you have some experience in this. So from their opinions, I feel comfortable. But I do think it makes sense to have almost the entire board very comfortable, so that we just keep good relations between each other. So I do feel like it does make sense to wait to vote and to potentially have TCA here to ask questions of what's the process. So so we could ask the questions like, can we put a ceiling on price for this next part of the dance? That's my thoughts.
Question for the board. Is there a preference over whether TCA or TCA, right, comes and presents in person or just comes in through Zoom?
No, I did present in person is better.
Is that kind of the feeling of everybody else? All right, we'll see what we can arrange. I
So on that note, as we talk to Matt and Richard with regards to some of the legal things we talked about in this, I will get a hold of TCA and see if Brian can be in attendance. And then I'll have Matt or Richard or both of them here. And if there's a line we can't cross, for instance, because of the RFQ versus RFP stuff, I'll actually have Rich talk or Matt talk first to educate all of us on that topic, so we don't end up having a conversation with TCA and going down a path that we probably shouldn't be going down. Is that fair? As a result of, I just don't know. I don't know what I don't know, and I want to make sure we don't, set ourselves up to have a conversation that that may be seen as inappropriate as a result of the process we currently went through. Is that?
I think
is
you've
that fair?
reflected everything that we've been asking for. So Commissioner Daniels, you had something you want to say? And then
I was just gonna say that Commissioner Lawrence, your question about getting a staff member, I believe last year there was a request for a facilities manager. That person could fulfill that role, as I had other conversations outside the meeting and to that. So that was all that I was gonna input there.
you're saying that there was budget for it last year.
There was a budget request for a facilities
Oh,
manager,
and we
and that
didn't
person
show
could
it.
have fulfilled that role of being a staff member for project.
Did we approve that?
I don't believe so.
I don't think we pulled anything out of the budget last year, so maybe we just didn't get it.
I don't remember those details.
can
It was
find
12
out.
months ago.
So there's another thing to find out. All right. Anything else?
That was it.
Otherwise, I'll hand the gavel back to.
And
Yes.
one more comments. I really don't think we should get Matt and also Rich in here, because we're not talking about legalese in here. We basically focus on that particular station, what kind of station we want, what can be done. Because to me, right now, I think because you got AIA contract and Matt trying to manage it, trying to really make it more complicated than it is necessary. So let's focus on the concept first, and then before we decide it later on, the legalese in there. I don't want it, I don't want a meeting to become a legal contract meeting, but focus on the building itself, what kind
I
of
think-
station you want.
I think. we
I
need to-
agree. I agree.
I was gonna say, I think we need a contract before we can start really working with them on the details of,
No,
otherwise we're asking them for free work about design decisions.
no,
uh,
we pay them as their regular fee. We've been paying them for the capital
Correct.
facility plan already, so we don't,
Was
it's
that-
just a discussion. I mean, whatever it
I
costs,
don't know.
yeah.
So I'm gonna add, once again, I'm gonna go back to legal because we were in the process of an RFQ. We've picked an agent or a company. We now have a contract before you with that company. And I think we need to be really careful, because if I was that architect firm and you were having this conversation with me and I've got a contract, what I would say is, oh, you're trying to get the station design, you're not going to approve my contract, and then you're going to go get somebody else to do the work.
What-
We need to be, Commissioner Chan, I hear what you're saying. I just want to make sure that at least from a staff's perspective, we do our due diligence. I know there's been very specific questions that have been brought up tonight that I can't answer, TCA can't answer, that either Matt or Richard need to answer at the end of the day. And then how the conversation goes with TCA, I just want to make sure that if there's a bridge we can't, or a line we can't cross, that we all know what that is based on the process we've currently done as a result of we've had a contract before you to actually either prove up or prove down. And I want to make sure that we do everything on the up and up, and some of this is stuff I just need a little bit of counsel from Richard and Matt to do that. And Richard and Matt are going to be here because it's the first meeting of the month anyway, or one of those two will be here anyway. So I hear what you're saying. I understand where you're going. I just want to make sure that, you know, I want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's. Obviously, the board can do what the board wants to do, but I feel it's my job to make sure if there's something that we need to inform you of, that we do that. And I just want to make sure we don't cross a line that we're not supposed to cross.
Yep.
At the end of the day. So if that works, that's where staff will go for the meeting, the first meeting of October.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Somebody who writes statement of works and does stuff like that in my profession, you know, there are definitely instances where people try to get ahead of the contract, so to speak. I think it definitely does also make sense that maybe as we go through this contract or this construction project, maybe if there's a group that, you know, are very interested in discussing those decisions on design and all of that. Maybe that's a committee for, you know, to go through that stuff and then bring recommendations to the board. So we don't have to have as much, you know, hours and hours of talking about roll-up doors here in the main meeting. But, you know, I'll lean on my other commissioners to decide the path we take forward. I will hand the chair back, or hand the chair back the gavel, and I guess we'll move on as long as there's nothing else. All right.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rowland. On to South County Fire Division briefs with AC Eastman.
Chair Daniels, I'd like permission to be excused.
Yes,
I'm half dead here.
you don't sound good, so thank you.
Mark, take care of yourself.
Yes.
Get well, Mark. We appreciate you being here.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Actually, Chief Eastman, can we take a 10-minute bio break? Okay, I'll come back here. It's 8:27, so we'll come back. Okay, so we're gonna skip B for the moment and go to new business in the interest of time with Fire Prevention Week resolution for action with the Community Outreach Manager, Shawnery Guzman, and then we'll come back to unfinished business with AC Eastman.
All right, thank you. I'll make this short and sweet. We're just asking commissioners that you sign our Fire Prevention Week proclamation. Fire Prevention Week is October 8th through the 14th. And this year's theme is cooking. Safety starts with you, fire prevention. Pay attention to fire prevention. 80% of home fires actually start in the kitchen. For unattended cooking, and that's across the US, and we're no different here in South County Fire Service area. So we are going to be doing a campaign to educate our community as we do all year long, but we'll put a spotlight on it for Fire Prevention Week. We have a Fire Prevention Week open house on October 7th that we hope that you can join us at. It's one of our busiest and most diverse open houses that we have throughout our community. And I won't read verbatim the proclamation because I know you guys can look at that and read it on your own. I won't read it line for line, but if you would sign that, we would really appreciate it. And we really appreciate your support in our community outreach and education efforts. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.
Thank you, Shawnery. Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, Shawnee, I just appreciate, I think prevention is really critical. I think your department has done a great job. So especially I think you were not there until last week, or last meeting, I told my Asian Service Center really have great, you have really, you know, reach out to those newly arrival people, and the message got through. So if no other questions, I would like to make a motion to adopt the adoption for the Fire Prevention Week Resolution 09192023-23.
It has been moved by Commissioner Chan and seconded by Vice Chair Rowland for the adoption of the Fire Prevention Week. Is there any further discussion?
Just one question. What can we do to help out with the October 7th event?
Just your presence and letting the community see you out and about and supporting those programs really does help us further that education into the community. So yeah, just be present.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well,
All right.
as you made a comment, the prevention, the whole goal is that prevent a call that never made. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Motion before the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bearing
Thank
with
you.
us and staying on, Salih.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, back to unfinished business with Assistant Chief Eastman.
Well, good evening again. We've got two of our deputy chiefs, Deputy Chief Hughes and Deputy Chief Curtis. If you don't know, Chief Hughes is our deputy chief, and he's responsible for the EMS division. And he does other things along with that, but EMS is primary responsibility. Chief Curtis is part of the logistics division, which comprises facilities and the warehouse side, and the fleet, and he's kind of a catch-all as we go. So they're both here to give you a quick brief like we did last week on their two divisions. And I'm not sure who won the coin toss to go first, so I'm going to turn it over to both Joe and James, and whoever chooses to go first can. And then when they're done and get questions answered, we'll follow up with the next. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Hughes.
Thank you, Chief Eastman. Good evening, commissioners and liaisons. Thanks for the opportunity to give you guys an update on the happenings within the EMS division. Before I get going on that, I want to extend some gratitude to Chief Maxwell and the rest of the EMS division. Transitioning from a battalion chief's role to a deputy chief was definitely a larger learning curve than anticipated, and their benevolence and patience and grace over the last 9 months is something that I'm very grateful for. So thank you, Chief. I want to review the structure of our EMS division. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I know we have some new liaisons here. So our EMS division at South County Fire comprises of Chief Maxwell, who's the Assistant Chief of EMS and Safety, and then you have myself as the Deputy Chief for the EMS division. Within the EMS division, we have two different houses, essentially, two sides of the house. We have the acute side of the house, which is more operational, and it has our medical supervisors, known as our medical service officers, or MSOs. We have one daily 24-hour shift MSO, comprises of 4 individuals that make up that position. And we have 3 administrative MSOs, one for EMS training, one for quality assurance, and then another one for EMS logistics. On the other side of the house is more of our non-acute side of our responses. And that includes our CRP division, or in the industry, it's known as a mobile integrated healthcare. And this is an emerging division. I think this is really kind of the future of our responses in the pre-hospital setting. That current division has a Captain Picknell, that runs that division. There's a shift CRP, so there's 4 people that operate one position each day. And then we have a 40-hour employee that's a CRP. We have 3.5 community health workers. Those will be getting onboarded here in the next month or so. I'll be talking about them in a minute. And then we have a community resource specialist who specializes in our interactions with adult family homes, skilled nursing facilities. And then this person's also an advocate for vulnerable persons in our community. So that's the structure of our EMS division. So now I'd like to touch on some wins that we've had in the last year. Some of these aren't foreign to you. I know that Chief Maxwell has spoken on a few of them over the course of the last year. But the one that's really, I think that's super impressive and really shows our commitment to our community is our cardiac save rate. And there was a slide a few months ago that Chief Maxwell had shown that our cardiac save rate is 61.5%, which is really phenomenal. It's a testament to our folks out in the street that are providing the service and the training that we've put into our CPR and really the steadfast dedication to providing the best possible service that we can. That 61.5% compares to the state cardiac save rate at 38.5%, and nationally it's around 34.3%. Next items, I'm going to bunch these next three together because really they're the culmination of work that the community outreach manager Shawnery Guzman and Captain Picknell have done with their finding of other people's money, OPM, as Chief Hova says. And they've been able to find just shy of $1.5 million for 3 different services for our organization. Those 3 include a recently awarded Verdant grant for re-upping the CRP. There's been an additional funding there to cover for that 24-hour CRP spot that currently right now, if a CRP is on vacation or they call in sick, we don't backfill for that spot. And those are really valuable spots. That grant covers a certain amount of money for overtime. And it's also adding an additional community health worker. That grant was around just over between $400,000 and $500,000. I don't have the numbers offhand. The other monies that we were able to get, I know Chief Maxwell had talked about them earlier this summer, was the relationship we have with the North Sound ACH Accountable Communities of Health, and we were able to get around $455,000 in a contract for 2.5 community health workers and 1 additional 40-hour CRP, as described earlier when I was talking about the division, the structure of the division. And then the last one, this one doesn't directly go to South County Fire, but we were able to secure another $400,000 for the county to help fund seed money for the Nurse Navigator program that hopefully we get a vote on from the county fire chiefs here in the next week or two, and then a vote with the Snow 911 board to approve that program. And again, Chief Maxwell had touched on that earlier with the board here. Moving on to our next update, or our next win is we're coming up on a year of having our whole blood program, where essentially it's an opportunity for us to do a field transfusion, if you will, for blood products for our traumatic patients that are in shock, hemorrhagic shock. We've had 9 administrations in the last year of this product, and we've noticed an uptick in the last probably 2 months. We've given 33% of our blood in the last 3 months. So maybe that has to do with summertime and more trauma that happens in the summertime. People are out and about. We did have one documented positive outcome from this. I got a call from Dr. Corsa, a trauma surgeon at Providence, and he said our actions on scene given a patient this whole blood product to save this person's life. So we do have a positive outcome with that. Updating on our medic students, I'm happy to announce, to let the board know that we have 5 that are just finishing up their studies at Central Washington University. In fact, one of them just passed he was ahead of the others in the class due to a previous certification. He just passed his doctor's exam with Dr. Campbell yesterday. And we have 4 others that will be coming off here in the coming months. As of Monday, 3 additional students just started at Central Washington University, and we wish them luck in their endeavors over the next year. I can't wait to get over there and get an opportunity to see how they're doing and get progress reports from the university over there and support them in any way that we can. A couple of weeks ago, we got a couple active shooter training events. So 2 weeks ago, we collaborated with Linwood PD, North Sound SWAT, some other regional agencies to do a active shooter drill at the Alderwood Mall. That drill was very well organized. It was mostly law enforcement centric, but what we had the opportunities to do was to work on patient movements out of the hazard zone and get them into areas to where we can collect them and get them off to the hospital. We didn't have enough fire department resources in the middle of the night to be able to participate fully in the drill and really simulate what it looks like to get a patient out from outside of the hazard zone and transported to the hospital. But those working with the law enforcement with those movements was really important. Kudos to MSO East, who is our subject matter expert when it comes to the active shooter type events, and to the Station 15 crew on D shift. Their participation was awesome, and I really think they were able to take home some learning points. And I think we got to see some learning points on our interactions with law enforcement and how we work with them on the inside of a hazard zone while keeping not only the community safe, but protecting our fire department assets that are there to help the community, if they suffer a traumatic injury from a shooting. Here in about a couple of weeks, maybe October 11th, I think my notes say here, we're participating in a drill and another active shooter drill out in East County with Snohomish Fire District 4 and other agencies out east. I believe Sultan's going to be joining, and Sky Valley Fire, and maybe even Surfer. We're going to be participating. I'll be observing. We'll be participating with a MSO that will be going there. And then we're going to try to send an engine company and an EMS unit. I'm not sure if it's going to be a medic unit or an aid car, just to get some sets and reps on that drill. And I believe that drill has the hospitals involved with it as well. So I believe they're going to be actually transporting simulated patients from this active shooter drill to the hospital and see them through the whole process, which is really, it's a good opportunity for not only our pre-hospital providers, but for our folks at the hospital that we partner with. The next item here I'd like to chat about would be, it's a win for us. I didn't realize this coming into the EMS division, but having roughly 375 providers, EMS providers, and the training requirements, the state requirements on getting these folks recertified is a bit laborious. I am so impressed with the work that MSO Tom Keene has done and our administrative support in the EMS division, Sarah Strong, have done. They have done an amazing job. We get probably roughly 1/3 each year of that 375. 1/3 of them go through the recertification process. And without the tireless work that those two do, I'm not sure how we were able to do this when our division was even smaller. Working on as a vice chair within Snohomish County EMS or SCIMS, talking with my counterparts on that committee, our reputation because of the work that Sarah has done and Tom have done is really outstanding. Really what they do provides kind of a true north for the rest of the county on their recertification processes. So kudos go to them. 375 providers providing training for them throughout the year is definitely a robust task, and getting 1/3 of them recertified is even more robust. Moving on to Painfield has shown some interest here recently in the last couple of months. Painfield Fire or Airport Fire has shown some interest in the last couple of months of coming out of their area, out of the airport, and working with South County Fire when it comes to high acuity calls. So we're going to start small with them, and we're going to go on high acuity EMS calls to start with. We should see something here in the coming months with that, but we front loaded that with training with them. So MSO Keene, our training MSO, himself and a couple other of our paramedics in this program have gone and met with 3 of the 4 shifts. I think they have 1 more shift left to do high performance CPR training with them. And that's really important for us because we have such a substantial cardiac save rate. We want to make sure that the people that are working with us, when we're in one of these high risk events for the community, we want to make sure that they're trained to the standard that we have set, because we have a high standard here at South County Fire in our EMS division, and we want to continue to make sure that our numbers look good. Not because we care about the numbers, but we care about the actual people. Those are tangible humans, 61.5%. that get a good opportunity, another opportunity at life. And so when we train with Crane Field, we put that, we make that, we make that an important part. A couple things individually for me, I'm participating at Chief Maxwell's direction in the MAC group, the Multi-Agency Coordination 2.0. It's a countywide group that is formerly known as the Snohomish County Opiate Task Force. And then Chief Maxwell is working on the policy board at the next level up. Briefly mentioned it, but I'm the vice chair of the Snohomish County EMS. And really my focus there is I'm a believer in relationships. And when you build relationships, you build trust. When you build trust, you have transparency. And then we have a better ability to work more efficiently with each other. So my focus at Snohomish County EMS has really been building relationships. We have a new county doctor for Snohomish County EMS is Dr. K. I've really been working with her on how we can build trust and transparency as a county EMS agency, and with my counterparts there as well. So talk about some challenges, and maybe these are opportunities as well, depending on how you want to look at it. But I've talked about the 375-ish providers that we have, and how detailed it is to get them certified and recertification. And one of our challenges, and I alluded to it earlier, is we have one MSO that's dedicated to the training and the recertification of these folks. It's a daytime administrative MSO. MSO Keen works, a Monday through Thursday schedule, 40 hours a week, and trying to get our folks trained to the standard that we want to get them to, and trying to get their certifications is really difficult. And this is EMS is 85% of what we do. And it's really important that we be really good at that. And so one of the challenges is having more resources available to help train these folks. And the other element of that is we've onboarded over 40 new hires this year. And a lot of these new hires come with varying levels of experience, and they come from different regions of our country that have different standards, even though they all have the National Registry of EMT certification. But again, our standards here at South County Fire are high. And we have a high level of expectation for these new employees to perform at our expected levels. So after the fire academy, we usually spend 2 to 3 weeks in a post-academy environment, just focusing on EMS and collaborating as a team and working in unison on an incident. And again, that falls to that one MSO. Meanwhile, he's also trying to maintain the certifications of 375 folks and their training. So that's one of our challenges, but I think it's an opportunity as well. Another element is, I think we're approaching roughly 40-ish thousand calls a year, and 85% of those being EMS. That's over 30,000 community contacts, and we want to make sure we're doing it right. And one of the elements that ensures that we're going to be doing it right is the quality assurance. And again, this is another area that's a challenge for us, because when you have one person that's QAing over 30,000 calls, not to say that MSO Herbert is looking at every single call. We have to prioritize. There's so many calls. We have to prioritize what we can QA. So we're QAing our high profile events, or our high acuity events. And that's a challenge as well, because she's also torn in other directions when it comes to compliance within this organization, reporting compliance. And so getting those calls QA'd for 30,000 community contacts is definitely a challenge. I want to talk, I'm almost done here. I know I'm taking a little bit longer than you guys were probably wanting, but I want to talk about the community resource paramedics and where I think this is going for pre-hospital service, pre-hospital emergency services. Is we've done a heck of a job in the fire service over the last 50 years of teaching people to call 911. And there's a lot of folks that don't have good quality access to healthcare, and they utilize 911 for their healthcare. And traditionally, you call 911, you get a fire engine, a ladder truck, EMS unit to respond, and we've only been given 2 options. And those 2 options are to take someone to the hospital or leave them at home. Now, we all understand that the hospitals are getting clogged up, and they don't have the resources. They have nursing shortages. And we're seeing these extended wall times, and I'm sure you guys are all familiar with these wall times. So we need to be creative and come up with another way that we can the most efficiently take care of the community's need. Now, Chief Maxwell started the Community Resource Paramedic Program roughly 10 years ago, Chief? Yeah, about 10 years ago. And it's growing, but it's not growing commensurate with the pace of calls that are growing for those type of calls. These non-acute calls, we see a lot of addiction type calls, behavioral health, homelessness. We see seniors, vulnerable adults that need our services to help them. So the community's demand is really increased on these types of calls, and our scope of work is changing. So the CRP division has currently, as of today, 1,100-ish clients, and they have a trajectory of 1,600 clients by the end of the year that they'll have taken care of. And with the addition of Mill Creek, we've seen about a 10% surge on the need for the CRP program. And one data point that we have here is, and I think this one's really unique because we don't want to send that really expensive fire engine with a really expensive crew out and manage something that they're not equipped to manage. So when we send out the CRP to when a crew calls for a CRP, 71% of the time we're able to free up that crew for a more acute need of the community. And I think that's a really good statistic because, they're the people that are there to help navigate these people to the most efficient resource and really a resource that's gonna satiate their need of calling 911, because the fire engine, the ladder truck, the EMS unit, or the hospital isn't necessarily the best place for these folks to go. So the CRPs, they're doing a bang up job, and Captain Picknell and her team, I am just awestruck at their passion for this type of work, because it's not traditional fire service work. We have to be nimble, and we have to change with the scope of work that's changing. So they do a great job. So with that said, that wraps up my EMS division report, and I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Well, I'll just
Oh.
jump in. I think everybody can see Joe's passion for the humans we serve. Fundamentally, he cares about the people delivering the service. He really cares about the people we serve. I'll be completely transparent. I mean, I've had the honor of leading our EMS division for almost 20 years now, and we're known nationally, and it's 80 to 90% of what we do. And I was like, that is going to be drinking through the fire hose for this poor person. I've had the luxury of 20 years to absorb it. And now the pressure of keeping a premier system up, we lead a lot of state and national committees, and Joe has come in here with the passion. I think he feels overwhelmed at times, but he keeps swimming hard, and he's a sponge, and he's learning. And I'm just really honored and really proud how far he's come already. And he was the right person for the job. And so good job, Joe.
Thank you, Chiefs, and thank you for the report. That was very detailed, but I was able to follow everything, so you did a great job. Commissioner Kenny?
Thank you, Chief Hughes. Thanks for the presentation. I was really pleased to hear about the paramedic school. And the 3 in the new class are all 3 at Central Washington University?
Yes, sir. They just started on Mondays. They started classes on yesterday.
That's great. Is there as you look into the future another year, is there any reason to believe we wouldn't be able to get 3 or so slots for paramedic training next year? Is that something that you can predict yet?
Yeah, I think that's something, we're building our relationship with Central Washington University. Obviously, we've sent folks to Harborview over the years. I'm grateful that this organization, they chose me to go to Harborview for the very first class 20 plus years ago. They're both outstanding programs, and Central Washington University, we're going to build the relationships with them. And I feel very confident that we can get more slots in there. I'm not sure what our need's going to be. That's going to be up to Chief Maxwell, Chief Eastman, Chief Hovis, Chief Isotelo to determine what our needs are. But I'm very confident that we'll have slots there in the future if needed.
That sounds good, because that's kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps type of solution to our ongoing long-term issue of not having enough paramedics and how to get more other than bringing in laterals. You've got to train them. And this, if it's actually 3 or more per year, that's an actual viable route to create the paramedics we need. Maybe it doesn't meet our whole need, but it's a significant step in the right direction. So that sounds great.
It sure is. And I might add on to that, Commissioner Kinney, that I met our new hire recruits here a couple of weeks ago before they went up to the academy, and I was shocked on how many, and I've seen several classes in the past, and I was shocked on how many have come from established departments within our region. And I think one of those reasons that makes South County Fire a destination department for people is having the ability to give them career opportunities. If they choose to go to paramedic school, we've proven over 20 years from 2001, 2002, that we're committed to sending people to school. And that provides an opportunity for people that maybe come from different organizations that don't have that opportunity. And we know what kind of product we're getting as well.
Yeah. You mentioned Payne Field, and I haven't heard Payne Field mentioned here in a long time. So I was curious, particularly with the new terminal that opened, when was that, 2-3 years ago now? Are they any larger in terms of their daily staffing at Payne Field?
Well, I believe they are. I don't have specific numbers for you, and I'm more than happy to get those numbers and follow up if you need them. But they have increased their staffing, and they reached out to us here, maybe a couple months ago, showing interest that they want to start coming off the airport and working on that more high acute calls and transition to maybe even running just our average calls in an automatic aid format.
That's super interesting. That's great. Last question for you is, you didn't mention Dr. Campbell. And back during the first year of coronavirus, I'd see Dr. Campbell on our calls every so often. He'd say a few words. I'd always have a question or two for him because I just like to ask him a question or two. But I haven't seen him for a long time, and I haven't heard anything about him in a long time. What's going on with Dr. Campbell?
Well, I am remiss for not mentioning him, so thank you for the reminder. I'm embarrassed that Dr. Rich Campbell is an integral part of our organization as our medical director. He's doing an amazing job. His wisdom and his insight on how we provide care for our community is second to none. I've really gotten to enjoy the way he works, the way he communicates with our paramedics, especially when it comes to these quality assurance types of interactions they have with our providers. We use these as learning experiences for our providers, and his approach with it, especially, it's more of an adult learning environment where he'll have a conversation, and it can be a tough conversation, but in the end, it's a conversation where I think our provider is learning, and that's what we want. And Dr. Campbell, he's masterful at that. So he's doing great. And thanks for the reminder.
Commissioner Kinney, I would say he is bar none the most engaged medical director I've ever experienced. He is in this building and with our people way beyond what his contract requires. He's here multiple times every week. He rides with the MSOs. He rides on the medic units regularly. He, since our medic experience is dropping so much, we added another run review just for our first 1 to 2 year medics, so they could have more direct contact time with him. He's incredible. He is not your average medical director, for sure. And I will say also on the central thing, their medical director moved on. We were really happy with the quality. I was like, the medics coming out of there have just been really impressive, really happy with them. So I was really sad to see their medical director move on. But we are on their advisory board. We're now on Central's, or I'm on Central's paramedic, their school advisory board. So we get to influence, and that's where I came from back in '92. So it's kind of fun to do that. Yeah. But I think this year we're gonna have to keep evaluating each time. I don't want to rest on those laurels either. Yeah. So just wanted to add that they're going to have some kind of new director there.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Kinney? Or sorry, Commissioner Chan. I meant.
Well,
your microphone, please.
Well, thank you, sir. Can you refresh my memory? What's the background? When you mentioned 20 years ago, you District 1, and how you
My background?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, yes, I was hired in 1998, originally with District 111.
Right,
And I
okay.
have a patch that still has a District 111 patch running around my house somewhere. And in 2001, in the fall of 2001, our organization made the commitment to start training paramedics internally. And
Right.
myself, Battalion Chief Rob Gullickson, and a
Yes.
retired paramedic Steve Lindsay were the first to represent at that time Fire District 1 at Harborview Medical Center, UW.
So actually, I'm really interested in succession plan, probably Max will know that. And what motivate you? I was going to ask you private, but if you don't mind sharing it, because we always a problem with people kind of coming out from the MSO to be a deputy chief. You understand what I'm talking about, right? From how do you change from a 24-hour shift to a right now you're 4 days a week? What motivate you, or do we have any kind of succession plan? What motivate you? More interesting.
I'm not sure what
dedicated.
Great question. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I'd love to answer it in front of the group. So for me, I think Chief Maxwell hit on it. I believe in our service. I next to my wife and 2 daughters, this patch means the most to me in my life. So I care about this place. This place has provided me a fantastic life. And if it's my opportunity to give back, I believe in the people providing the service, and I believe in serving the people in the community. That's our number one job. This is a service industry. This isn't a serve us industry. And if I can, influence how we change or how we deliver service, then that sounds like a pretty darn good day's work to me. So I'm happy to work up here. It's a great team. It's a noble mission, and I'm just eternally grateful for everyone that I work with up here. So that transition from battalion chief to shift work to here, yeah, it's great. I'm happy. Yeah.
Well, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, really, I'm so happy that majority of people really go up the rank and become deputy chief. Thank you
He
very
didn't
much.
mention the 3 times he's tried to run out the back door and I've had to tackle him, but other than that, he's
Okay.
Actually, I would suggest we get some cameras put up, because I would pay to see footage of you tackling it.
Oh, there was an audience.
Well, I will say that if we have to come in 3rd place to anyone, your wife and children deserve to win that race.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Fernhoff?
Thank you, Chief Hughes, for your detailed briefing. Really appreciate it. And I think there was a hidden message in there, if I understood you correctly, that you have one MSO who is currently trying to do recertifications of 1/3 of our force of 375 personnel, and that we are in an industry that basically puts us squarely in the 85th percentile of EMS calls on a daily basis. It's quite possible that you might be a little overwhelmed with these challenges. So looking forward into the future, what would be staff's wishes in terms of trying to balance the load, considering this is our bread and butter? This is what we do.
Commissioner Fernhoff, you stole my question.
Sorry.
Well, I think they're both great questions. I think that the reorganization of the EMS division, I believe you guys might get have some conversations in the coming days about that. But I think, and I don't want to get too detailed on that. I'll let Chief Maxwell run with that with you guys. But I think looking at how we're doing business, doing it the same way is maybe not the best way of doing it. Maybe it is the great way of doing it. But we have to analyze what we're doing and figure out how can we more efficiently do business, and how can we take some of the workload off of others and move it on to, we just got to be strategic in moving the work around and working within the constraints of the system.
I would hope that you express your needs to the board in a way that allows us to get behind you, to support you, to make sure that our 85% of what the services that we provide to our community is solid for the future. So whatever that translation is, I just put that out to the rest of the board that we're here.
Thank you.
Joe is holding back, but yeah, you'll receive a presentation on Friday regarding some of our challenges and ideas to build on what Chief Hughes brought up. So thank you, Commissioner.
Will that presentation include some agencies as a North Star, what they've been doing and restructuring that could be modeled after here?
Yeah, I do. I will bring a few comparisons, but I will tell you, we're kind of the North Star. And I say that totally humbly, but it's often EMS is the afterthought in a lot of fire departments. So I will bring you some comparisons, but sometimes that isn't the North Star. Just like there was no community medicine in the state till we created the North Star or reinvented first aid or many things. There wasn't a North Star, so we created it because that's what our community needed. I will bring you some examples for sure, but that's my caveat.
My question was more than just Washington State. It was whether it be inside the US or some other country. So just it was a broader question than what's local.
No, and that's fair too. And my answer would actually be similar.
Okay.
We provide some of the most sophisticated paramedicine in the country, and that's just not because we're on our own world and that's what we think. When we go out to conferences or go to education, it's very clear that we've embraced, for our fire service, we have embraced EMS, and it's just people come from all over the world to see how EMS is done in the Pacific Northwest. And so we kind of do set the model out here. You go down, well, I won't name different states, but I will say that when medics come from out of state, sometimes it is challenging for them, and some of them don't make it here because they have to step up to such a high level. Like a lot of states, we don't sedate and paralyze people to intubate them. They're not even allowed to do that. We've been doing that like since 92 when I started. We've been doing that for almost 3 decades. And there are many, many states that they're not even allowed to do that, just for example. So we definitely set the stage here for most of that.
Okay.
So I wouldn't, I'll leave it at that. But thank you. I hope,
You answered. You're good enough.
I say that humbly.
Yes, thank you. I mean, a great example was we talked about that vial of blood where the doctor came back and said, "Hey, look, had you not done that out there, this patient couldn't have survived." So thank you for that. Vice Chair Rowland.
Just kind of an observation across a lot of the organization that may come into this. And that is, when you look at the number of support staff that we have versus uniform staff, we have some of the lowest numbers, as far as ratios are concerned, among many of the organizations in our area. I guess my question to you, and you don't have to answer it now, but as you're preparing asks and things like that, maybe the way we've gotten away with it is by putting more, I guess, grunt work, more paperwork, more, things that normally would go to, some support staff, headquarters type thing on the shoulders of our, uniform personnel, whether it be at the DC level or the MSOs or whatever, when it comes to certifications and tracking all of it. And, I think there's definitely, and I'm still learning about this, but I think there's definitely an area where they have to be involved and they should be involved, but maybe it's just we need more support for them than a single administrative assistant in an org chart for an entire division. Just things to think about as you guys are talking about reorganization. That not that we want to get top heavy at headquarters with lots of staff or increase that or take anything away from staff. I just want to make sure that you guys aren't getting burnt out by us not having those resources available to you to get rid of some of that day-to-day grind.
I think, you were hitting it. We used to not have a lot of admin assistants, and we're slowly growing that. And I think you're 100% right. And our like our QA MSO or training MSO, I'm worried about them as humans. They are getting ground into the ground, and people won't want to come and work in this building because they know that we'll just grind them up and spit them out. And these are high performing people that I don't want to lose. So I think there is an opportunity for that admin support. On the same side of that coin, for training our EMTs and training our paramedics and doing quality assurance, we need paramedics we need the expertise,
Of course.
too. And I'm not saying you don't. So yes, what you're saying, 100%. Thank you.
So Chief, I might add on to that if I may. So the other aspect of that, Commissioner Rowland, is that non-acute side, or that community resource paramedic side, and what the future of the American Fire Service looks like in emergency services pre-hospital wise. And it's my belief is I'm coming in here with fresh eyes, coming out of the operations division as a battalion chief. I didn't realize where we are going as emergency service providers, especially on that non-acute side of the house, or the CRP side. That is going to be the future of emergency services. So committing to that and investing in that to be a core service for us, that's a challenge that we were talking about earlier. But I also think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to identify unique and more efficient ways to do business. So really committing to CRPs and how we do business on the non-acute side. That's our future, and that's something that I would be highly interested in talking to anyone about, making that more of a core service too. We're not out spending our time looking for OPM, if you will, because there's a lot of time looking for OPM to provide that service, and there's a lot of hours looking for money to provide that service.
Just so that we understand our acronyms, OPM.
Other people's money.
A grant writer.
Thank you. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that
We're on the same
Office of
page.
Project Management, I've
Yeah.
got a lot of
Yeah.
different ones. I think
Keep
I
it
knew what you're
simple.
talking about. We got,
I keep it simple.
yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hughes.
Good evening, Chair Daniels, commissioners and liaisons and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to sit before you this evening and present to you my divisional update. I was asked to stand up a division and supported by staff and the board to bring forward a logistics division. And that was a new ask for us at South County Fire. And I wanted to start off by recognizing all of the folks that I have the opportunity to work with. I have a really great team in our fleet division, in our facilities division, and in our central stores division. And it's not without their hard work that I wouldn't be able to be here this evening to tell you about some of the great successes that we've had. When we stood up a logistics division, we envisioned a consolidation effort to bring forward a lot of efficiencies that we lacked as a new agency in South County Fire.
Could you speak up just a little bit? The overhead
Oh, the
thing,
fans,
they're-
I'm sorry.
yeah, they're just adding a little bit of.
Sure. And we were asked to build efficiencies into our division and take a strategic look. And under the guidance and leadership of Chief Eastman, I was able to, just like my colleague to my right here, Chief Hughes, I'm able to learn and develop and grow as an individual as well. So we were able to take a look at our divisions separately, but also collectively. And so I represent to you three facets of logistics. First, it's the fleet section, which I don't have any statistics necessarily for you, but I have a lot of numbers. And what's interesting about fleet is I never really thought about it in this sense, but we have 20 fire engines, 4 ladder trucks, 23 medical transport units, 5 special operations units, 6 command cars, and 45 staff vehicles, along with 7 miscellaneous boats and trailers and whatnot. That represents 110 vehicles in South County Fire. That to me is a staggering number, and I didn't appreciate that until I got into the division. All of that represents a replacement value to you today of $41 million in assets if we were to replace that today. That's incredible, and we're able to do that
maintenance and upkeep and support for those vehicles through an interlocal agreement with our city of Linwood shop, where they have a team of at least 4 mechanics full-time and a fleet supervisor working on our vehicles. Along with that, they also provide the support when we get into purchasing and procurement and replacement of our vehicles. I want to represent to you with your support. We have a success, and I have great news to report to you that the first of the fire pumpers that we asked for you to help support and purchase for us will be delivered on Monday. It will be delivered to the Linwood shop. And next month, I expect the second one so the first one's going to be Spartan, and the second one's going to be the Pierce, to be delivered in the next 30 days. 30 to 45 days will be the Pierce. So that's good news. We're excited about that. We continue to address a lot of, we remain agile within the division because of some of the supply chain issues that we continue to experience today. We have vehicles that are delayed due to supply chain issues. Now we're experiencing a auto workers labor strike. So we're not sure what that impact's going to be, but we just have to be aware and remain vigilant and continue to adjust. One of the last updates you've heard many times is from myself or Chief Eastman, where we are with our brush truck. I just delivered this week to our purchasing manager a request to go out for an RFP. So we're going to bid the brush truck. We had the hopes that this would be an easy purchase and an easy request. However, it's turned into a very difficult request. And I wanted to recognize the efforts of all the people that were involved in that to get us to where we are today. Also under logistics, we have a facilities section. And again, I'll give you a couple numbers. We have 15 fire stations, a headquarters, a training center, 4 satellite offices, and a handful of what I like to call strategically owned properties for future decisions by the board. Those are all maintained by a team of 3 individuals, and they do a phenomenal job. However, they're spread pretty thin because that represents, I couldn't tell you how many millions of dollars in capital assets. So those 3 individuals are continuing to work with Mount Lake Terrace and our friends in Mill Creek to integrate those facilities into South County Fire. It's a learning process for all of us, and it's a little bit of a, hey, guess what we've discovered today with, for example, Fire Station 19. So that involves all hard work on the team's effort, or on their part, excuse me, and some coordination at the administrative level. So thank you to our friends in Mill Creek and Mount Lake Terrace for working with us and being patient as we transition. Also under logistics is our central stores, and that's basically our supply hub. Everything from firefighting turnout gear to uniforms to consumables is managed and overseen by a central stores team. They handle all shipping and receiving aspects, bulk storage, and any special orders, and they're terrific subject matter experts with inventory management. Finally, under logistics, we chatted once before about our drone or our UAV program. That was a project that was asked of logistics, and we continue to explore those aspects of drones. And recently did some training in a conference, out of state conference, where we discovered some programs that we're going to explore, try to understand, and that involves drones as first responders, where drones respond beyond visual line of sight, and they're basically your first vehicle that arrives on scene to start an orbiting process and feeding back of information through streaming services. So those systems are in place in several fire departments and police departments in California, and we are looking at that and exploring that as a division. So that is my condensed version in the interest of time of logistics, and I'd be happy to field any questions. And again, I appreciate your time and support as we continue to build logistics.
So Chair, before we go to questions, I guess I'd like to add, creating a logistics division of an organization of our size from where we were is a monumental task. And there's a lot of moving pieces with it. And What James didn't tell you is we do have great people that work. They do the work of a team twice the size as they are. And I say that sincerely. But one of the things that James isn't talking to you about for this is one of the things he's been tasked with is resilience. If we learned anything about the pandemic, we learned that, and with the supply chain issues, that we need to be able to function when bad things happen. And in our scenario, we've dealt with a pandemic. I think one of the things we lead up to is earthquake, and most people will tell you it's not if it happens, it's when it's going to happen. And that's one of the tasks that's on his plate. But before we can get to all that, there's processes he's putting in play. There's efficiencies she's trying to find, because my guess is you'll have the same question is, well, you're doing a lot of work with not a lot of people. And though you may not see asks, maybe this year, but one of the things they're doing is trying to get efficient and utilizing those efficiencies, putting in process and play, which will then help drive where we need to be from a resilient perspective. And one of the challenges that division faces, both, I'm going to say in all three of them, right, in fleet, facilities, and the central stores warehouse part, is space. It's been identified in the facilities plan. We've identified, maybe not everybody agrees to what's in there and where they should be, but we do need more space for us to store product, for us to be resilient for 3 to 6 months in time of disaster, right? If you all know, when the pandemic happened, we were on the phone with the state because we didn't have enough N95s in play. And we were fortunate enough to get the first shipment from Olympia to us. And then we were forward leaning there, and we were really lucky. Our county was in a really good position, and we stayed up front of that. And I'm going to say, and I'm quite proud to say this, is we did not get to a place where we had to curtail operations because we couldn't get stuff. I think we had really good people working on it, and I think we got really, really lucky. And for things like DEF, the fuel we have to put in the diesel engines now so we can operate with diesel fuel. That was really hard to get. We were fortunate when the pandemic started because Jim had a pallet and a half. So there's very simple things that team is also responsible for, that gets added to a plate that's already really full. But that's an important aspect of what that division's doing. We talk about it a lot. But I know James and the team is working through that piece. And the one thing I'll say about James is he takes the bull by the horn, and he's got his team, and he leads them very well, and they follow him. And it's been very fun to watch from my position. And you talk successor planning. I'm watching a guy who came off the streets, had a couple different positions as deputy chief, and quite frankly, did them all equally passionately. And I'm quite confident as I get closer to retiring and leave, that I guarantee you, it may take a few years to get it where it needs to be, but you will have a logistics division, that will not only provide the day-to-day needs of the organization, but they will also have us be resilient. So when and if we have a challenge like an earthquake or another pandemic, our organization will continue to provide the service that we provide today without missing a beat. We'll keep our people safe, our citizens safe, and buy time for James and the rest of the folks that are going to be here when that happens to figure out how to get stuff 4 months from the day it happened, to stay in the fight. So that's a piece that he didn't talk about. I think that's a really important piece. Just realize we're building a division. It's going to take time. And I have no doubt that when this is done, just like EMS, people will look into us of how you did it and how we go. So I'll stop with that. I just want to thank James for the leadership he's providing, and him striving for excellence and learning things outside of just logistics. He realizes, and I think Chief Hughes does too, is they have to be able to be in a position to fill my position and Son's position when we go. And they're doing the work to get the knowledge, to get the insights, to succeed some of us older folks, so you can stay within the organization, And you're looking at two future leaders as department once the rest of us decide it's time to quit. So thank you for letting me do that, and I'll let it go back to you guys' questions for James.
Thank you, Chief Curtis, for the presentation. Thank you, Chief Eastman, for the additional information. Paul Harvey would say the rest of the story. So, Commissioner Kenny.
Thank you. Chief Curtis, I was curious, got a couple questions for you. When was the division created?
Commissioner Kenny, I was asked to come in. I want to say it was March or April of this year. I was serving as a health and safety officer for the first part of the year, and then transitioned in.
Thank you. Second question, I see on the org chart that Steve Wheeler, our GIS specialist, is working for you. So I was curious, what's happening in the world of GIS and what's the future of GIS for us? GIS being our mapping function.
Yeah, that's a critical function of the organization in that sense. And I haven't had the opportunity to necessarily work hand in hand with Steve Wheeler. So I would defer to Chief Eastman for that.
So there's a data line, chief and the data analysts and GIS Wheeler still currently work under me. Eventually it'll move, but with everything that's going on with what James, there should be, I think there's a dotted line there, Commissioner Kenny, if I'm not mistaken. It could be a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
So
there is a dotted line.
Yeah. So, and part of that's is with James coming in and taking off where he launched from, and the planning side and all the stuff we have going with everything. Jennifer right now, both Jennifer and Steve still report to me. And eventually that will move once everybody gets their legs under them. And I'm not sure if at the end of the day, if logistics is the place that lands, if it lands someplace else, but right now so Steve still does the work Steve's been doing, works in conjunction with Jennifer, our data analyst. One of the challenges we have in that realm is ArcGIS has significantly changed their software. And some of it's online and some of it's not online. And it's been Steve spent a lot of time over this year learning the new software, and learning the capacities of the new software. Cause it's in some ways, the processes are very different. And Steve's been doing that work for us for, 15, 16, 17 years. So he's used to using the older style. And like some of us, learning the new way to do business sometimes can be challenging, especially when you've done it the same way for so many years. So Steve continues to do the normal day-to-day work that he does for us, the ad hoc work that he does for us, Leslie and the rest of the folks within the organization. And what's really been happening when he's not doing that stuff is he's learning the advantages of the new software, the disadvantages of the new version. We keep talking about online because they wanted everybody to go to the cloud. One of the challenges with the cloud is there's a cost associated with it of storage space that we're challenged with. One of the other things is if we do have something happen, we rely on Steve when we do some of our fire operations center work, when dispatch is down in those settings where Steve has a computer here with all the rest of us as we dispatch units when dispatch is down, and Steve actually we've got it set up where he can pinpoint a call and get the station orders so we can dispatch the appropriate people to those multiple alarm fires or those multiple resource EMS calls. We can't do that in an online environment if we're out. So Steve's working on some of those things to see what those options are for us. And are we at a place where, we do it on a desktop application or a laptop application. At some point, we probably need to move to a server application too. So he's doing some of those things as far as where we should go. And part of that is he needs to understand and learn the new version of GIS or Esri software to help inform some of those things. So that's what he's doing, but he still does all the work we ask him to do and creates the maps as a byproduct of the analytic work he does. And the great thing is now we've got two minds working through that. You got Jennifer Pardee, who's our data analyst, and now you connect her with Steve Wheeler, and we've got a team that's actually really good at what they do. at the end of the day. So that's an update of not just what Steve's doing, but the data analytics side.
Yeah, I just like to hear from time to time, mapping actually becomes something that is important in our work. And it's data driven and it changes over the years. So just like to hear from time to time. Thank you.
And I can add that I have had the opportunity to work with Jennifer Pardee extensively on strategic outlooks for our fleet and expenses and the funding side of it. And she's been very instrumental in determining what the future of the fleet looks like. So appreciate all of her support.
Great. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Chan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's amazing that now remind your background. It basically you from fire and health services and switch to logistic.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Chan. I was hired in 1997 as a firefighter in Fire District 1, and also had the opportunity to work in Fire District 1 and 11.
Right.
Was part of several mergers, consolidations, and reorganizations over the year. Joe and I had the opportunity to work next to each other at Battalion 15. So I was a battalion chief just before coming up here to deputy chief. I served in an interim role for about 9 or 10 months in the fire marshals or fire prevention division.
Right.
And transitioned into health and safety for a short time, and then transitioned into logistics. So jokingly, I said that I served in 3 divisions in 3 months.
Okay. It's amazing that you definitely, Commissioner Kennedy is right. It just happened that one of my nephew was actually a major in logistics in Western University, up in Birmingham, and he eventually worked for Kenmore, the big truck company supplying all that stuff. So where do you gain all this logistic information, able to take over that logistic part of it?
Well, I think sometimes it's easy to say that I like to listen and ask a lot of questions. I do have some formal education in emergency management. However, I'm not sure how that applies to logistics, other than being very attention detailed. What's most interesting is my career path was going to take me to be an architect or perhaps an engineer. And well, I can share this over the years as I was working in as a young apprentice. Wanting to become an architect, I kept watching the fire engines in South Seattle go up and down the street. And I said to myself, I'd much rather be out there than behind a desk. And so here I am finishing out my career behind a desk. So I'm not sure.
No, in a sense that I really encouraging. I mean, it's amazing that again, I appreciate you from a battalion chief switch it to here. But I think to me is whatever education we can provide you to further about logistics, that would be great. But it just happened to, I have another nephew, went to UW, GIF major. It's amazing, listen to him. So can the GIF do the city gate study and all that stuff?
Steve can do a lot of it, yes.
Yeah, well, we're talking about retirement. I don't know how Steve is going to be, but he was retired as a firefighter, right? I mean, it's great to have that fire service. To me, that is very critical in our deployment in the past, in the future, especially calls and everything else, locations, everything else. So you have a big responsibility now. You're combining both together, and so good luck. But then at the same time, Steve, we need to get someone else behind Steve, because that to me, that data is critical. Us to, I know you both mentioned about efficiency. That's the key thing that we do not have all. Well, I'm in a speech. We cannot continue spending, I don't know, per patient, whatever wise, because our demands, aging the population, all this stuff we're not related to our tax revenue, what we cost are. So that is critical. So you have a very, very important position. Let you know.
Thank you. Point well taken. And thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other commissioners? DC Curtis, thank you for the work that you do. and supporting all those that are under you, all the people that are under you. Earlier on in your presentation, you talked about pumpers being received. One, is in a couple weeks.
We're
Monday?
gonna have our first one, the Spartan S180, as we know it, is going to be delivered on Monday to the Linwood shop. I got that phone call today.
And so when will it be street ready?
I'm gonna ask the shop to make that as quick as possible. However, we have some, I get tired of saying this, we have some supply chain order issues, and our headsets are back ordered. And I don't know when the hearing protection headsets that we wear, intercom system, we don't know when that's going to be delivered. So Lauren Angiano, our fleet supervisor, and I are working out a alternative to see if we can't borrow some equipment from one of the pumpers that we're going to be sending down to Henderson for some refurb work. So we're going to be shifting some pieces of equipment around, but we have that on our radar, and we're going to try and get that rig in service. I don't want to give bad information. My target is 3 weeks. I'm hoping that we could meet that. But please don't be upset at me if it's 4 weeks.
So your target's before Halloween.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. And then you said the next one was coming.
We have that for November. Yeah, that should be ready for inspection at the Pierce plant in November. And then it'll just be drive time from there to our shop.
And then another target of 3 weeks from that delivery date.
Yes, because we have some upfitting that we have to do, radios that we have to clone or program, equipment that needs to be mounted, and just basic upfitting needs.
Right. No, I've learned through this process of sitting here that just because it gets delivered doesn't mean that it goes to the street. So that's all I was just trying to clarify there.
Yeah, man, I wish for me, for those that know me well, I can tend to be impatient. And so I have to tell myself to slow down and let the process work out. But yeah, I think 3 weeks is a fair number of time frame at the shop.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you for the presentations.
Thank you, sir.
And we will go on to item C, which is with me for the budget workshop for discussion only. So back in January on the 17th, we approved holding the budget workshop on Friday, September 22nd for the 2024 budget planning. One of the things that I learned early on when I thumbed through the Washington State Fire Commissioner's Handbook, as well as read up on the job description when I was running for the office, is that the biggest things that we as fire commissioners do primarily is budget, finance, and policy making. So setting the budget is probably the top priority of what we do. I also confirmed that we need to have this to the Snohomish County by November 30th is our deadline. So we have about 2 months to iterate over what we want to push through as the budget. Looking for a head count for in-person and virtual. So I wanted to get from Mark what he was going to do, but he's not here, obviously, because he's sick. So I'll check in again tomorrow with him. But the sense that I got from the elected commissioners was that we're going to be here in person. Is that okay? And so Mark's the only maybe at this point as far as whether it's virtual or in person. So, and our liaisons, you guys are going to be here in person as well, the three of you. Okay. Okay.
I'll have to see based on my own.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. I was just looking, try and help Melissa out with the head count and, food and so forth. So,
Chair,
yes.
we can advertise, we're gonna have a big lunch, we're a great lunch. Mr. Long, Commissioner Long, you found. But joking aside, I think it's.
Commissioner Chan, can you turn your mic on, please?
I think it's critical in a workshop to have a in-person, right, meeting and showing numbers and stuff like that. Have a really good casual discussion. So I'm really encouraging every single one. Well, Commissioner Lawrence to come here in person.
All right, Melissa, does that work for you?
Yes, you need to know my understanding is that Commissioner Lawrence is not coming at all.
I will confirm with him. So, all right.
So do you want to discuss about particular things in that workshop? You want a
We have an agenda for it.
agenda for it?
Did we mail out I thought I saw something.
Everybody received, all the information on Friday.
That's what I thought. So it should be in the inbox.
Okay,
So
I have some thoughts. Maybe I just off the lines. I'll submit to everyone a particular thing I would like to able to discuss on the
Okay.
workshop. Okay.
and with that, where's my agenda go? We did new business, and so now we're going to committee updates with the finance committee with Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, originally we were thinking of Thursday's our meeting, but since we got workshop on budget, so I'm going to delay that until next week. So Thursday. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And intergovernmental with Commissioner Fernhoff.
No new updates.
All right, and then with Still 911 myself, as DC Hughes commented on that, the Still 911 board is looking to do the nurse navigator, and they're going to use the assessment algorithm that for the fire and who's going to pay what amount. So that's the most noteworthy item that's come before. Our next meeting will be on Thursday as a full board. On to commissioner comments.
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
yeah.
Snow 911, the big EMS meeting is tomorrow. Who's attending from South County Fire?
Chief Maxwell as the assistant chief of EMS. Can you answer Commissioner Kenny's?
Just those three.
The three of you, there weren't any more?
Well, it's open to anybody. It's open to all the fire tech, like. So it's open to, it's a kind of a joint meeting. It's the fire chiefs group. And it's also fire TAC, which is a subgroup, so you've got the fire chiefs. And then you've got the operations chiefs and all those folks. It's a joint meeting between both of those to hear what Burke came back from when the fire chiefs asked Burke to look at options for ways we can do things to be more efficient. And when you look at all the ways we work together, and so Burke's given their report in a work shop setting. And I would imagine there'll be multiple fire chiefs from each agency to hear what Burke has to say about potential opportunities for us to do something together versus apart, and looking for those kind of efficiencies. I think I'll go back a little bit. Part of this stems from the success we had with the pandemic, quite frankly, as we came together as a fire service in Snohomish County, took geopolitical lines, took patches, and realized what we needed to do is what was best for everybody that we provide service for, and we do that better, stronger than independent. And that's kind of parlayed into, you look at how we do hazmat in the county, how we do rescue in the county, what we do with county EMS, what we do with, we have the training academy. You've talked about the training consortium, which is a different way of doing it. Potentially having a training center that trains everybody in the fire service in Snohomish County. And it's a separate group. We're not sure what that separate group looks like, but it would be, you either pay or give people, it's just a different way to do it that maybe is more efficient or brings everybody up to a higher level, is kind of the thought process behind it. When you look at all the different ways that we in the fire service in Snohomish County do that kind of stuff and touch, the fire chiefs and the leadership of the fire chiefs felt that they had some dollars to actually explore and use Burke to do it, about where we may be able to become more efficient in some of those avenues that we already do countywide efforts like rescue, hazmat, training academy, and how can we make those or take them to the next level. So it's a brief from, it'll be the first touch of Burke, who interviewed every fire department in the county, talked to several subgroups within the county, and they took all that information, compiled it together, and tomorrow we're going to get the brief. And I don't know where it goes from there, but that's kind of the I wasn't part of it. I wasn't part of the process. I was interviewed by them, That's my understanding of what it is, and they're giving their report back. I'm sure there'll be 50 to 100 people there. And then I don't know where it goes from there. I don't think we have an idea of, they say, yep, it's great, you should all do this, or really you should stay independent, or agency A should take the lead. I don't think anybody knows what they're bringing forward, but that's the context of what we asked them to do. Then we did it under 911 because we use them as the agent to and through their process. And I think there'll be more to come based on what they present, whether that's actionable or it requires further study. I don't know. I mean, we gave them a pretty monumental task, I think, when you look at the 36 different ways that we interoperate within the fire service in Snohomish County. And so I'm looking forward to it because I think there's, I think we've proven that working together does work. I think we've created and we've proven that. We've regionalized 911. There's a lot of things we've done. So that's what it's about. That's the game. I know Sean and I will be there. I'm sure most of the deputy chiefs, if they don't have something pre-planned, will be there. And if Chief Hope is feeling better, he will be there. If not, obviously Sean and I will be there instead. Chief Isotelo can't be there. He's up at the academy at North County. But we will have a good presence there. And there'll be more to come. We'll see what they come up with and where it goes.
I got a quick question. Is this 911 still in Zoom, in person or Zoom?
Zoom.
So the meeting you said you'll be there means Zoom.
It's not a Snow 911 meeting though.
No, we're doing it at their new building in in a big meeting room at their new facility. So there's an online portion for this. Most of us are going to be there in person.
Come there on the meeting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the majority of our team from South County is going to be there in person.
Okay.
As a result of, and it'll be a quite lengthy. I think it goes from 11 till almost 3:34. I think it'll be a long afternoon.
Okay.
All right, on to commissioner comments. All right, on Monday, the 11th, I was unable to go to the Station 17 ceremony. I went last year and it was very informative. I appreciated that. It was my 6-year-old's first day of kindergarten, so I didn't go to that, but I did go to the event at the North County RFA training facility, and that was a very nice event. And it was good to see the attendees that were there. And then tonight was interesting. I was late because Jackson High School was doing their curriculum night, and their teacher commented about the ACT coming in and doing CPR for 2 days. And so I was surprised to, oh, fire department is going to get involved. So that was good news. I don't know if there's other high schools that they do that with, but I thought that was interesting and insightful. Anyone else? All right, with that, we will go into executive session, collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 42.30.140 sub 4 sub A sub B for information only, so no decision or action to follow. And we will go ahead and start off for 20 minutes. All right, it's 10:27. I call the meeting back to order so that we can adjourn at 10:27.